The execution chair fit me perfectly, which was the first thing about the mission that made me suspicious. It stood alone in the heart of Ashlight Relay, surrounded by 12 ivory alcoves and a ring of warm gold lamps. The builders had shaped its back for a body with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a human range of motion, even though they had vanished 80,000 years before humanity reached that part of space. Flexible contacts settled against my temples. A restraint curved across my chest without touching it. Above the chair, a plain mechanical timer waited at 5 minutes, 12 seconds. When it reached 0, the relay would open the only route to 61,412 refugees, trapped beyond the Quran Veil. When it reached 0, every manual agreed that I would be dead. Commander Wren, Keeper Eric's Vol said behind me, "The cradle has completed its recognition. You should step out until final activation." I ran one thumb along the nearest contact. 16 narrow conductors disappeared beneath the chair's ivory shell. The current manual described 4. "Why are there 12 alcoves?" I asked. Eric's 4 dark eyes moved toward them. He was Toleran, tall and spare, with translucent sensory fans folded along his neck. His caretaker robe carried no rank marks. Ashlight's old golden light made the silver edges of his skin look carved. "Witness stations," he said. "They have neural contacts. Ceremonial replicas." Replicas of what? The relay shuddered around us. Dust drifted from the vaulted control chamber. Far beyond the open service arch, the sealed transit aperture filled half the hangar, a black circle 3 kilometers wide, set inside gunmetal rings. It should have shown the stars beyond the Charon Veil. Instead, it reflected our own lamps like a blind eye. My mission clock showed 11 hours, 43 minutes until the first Palehaven convoy ships lost safe air processing. Eric's glanced at it. "This is not the time to question sacred architecture." "It is exactly the time. 46 pilots have activated Ashlight since the continuity manual was written. All remained in the central cradle until the route stabilized. All died. That tells me what people did. It doesn't tell me why the machine needed it. The neural anchor must hold one continuous identity. Shared signals decohere. The builder's own warnings say so." "Show me the original warning." Eric's fans tightened. "No complete original survives." That was the second thing that made me suspicious. I released the chest restraint and climbed out. The mission council watched from the upper gallery. Admiral Tovan Mir, who commanded the Joint Rescue Force, pressed both hands against the rail. His people, the Varesh, wore emotion in the color moving beneath their skin. He had been pale gray when I entered the chair. Now anger darkened him toward iron. "Commander," he said through the chamber speaker, "you volunteered after reading the manual." "I volunteered to open the relay. The mission requires an anchor. The manual requires one. The relay has not answered my questions yet. Palehaven does not have time for philosophy." "Good. I'm an engineer." I signaled May Juno, my neural systems officer. She entered from the service arch carrying a plain sensor case, and none of the reverence expected inside Ashlight's heart. May had once repaired a damaged cortical link while riding an evacuation lift through atmospheric turbulence. Ancient architecture did not impress her if it lacked accessible connectors. Eric's moved between her and the nearest alcove. "No instruments touch the witness stations." "Then I don't touch them," May said. "I observe field leakage from here." As she placed 3 passive pickups on the floor, Admiral Mir's voice sharpened. "You have 9 hours before activation must begin to allow full convoy passage. Every test consumes margin." "How long did the last pilot survive?" I asked. Eric's answered reluctantly. 3 minutes 41 seconds after threshold. The route held without her for the remaining 91 seconds. So the machine required her continuous identity until threshold, not until the timer ended. She remained because the manual required it. And died 54 seconds after she stopped being technically necessary. The gold lamps seemed colder. I had read the names of all 46 pilots on the approach. Their portraits lined Ashlight's outer memorial corridor. Every species had supplied at least one. Each had been described as a glorious, still hand, holding the route for others. Their deaths had become proof of courage, then proof that death was necessary. I respected courage too much to use it as insulation around a design assumption. May's pickups clicked. "There is active coupling in all 12 alcoves. Low level, but not decorative." Eric stared at her case. The relay recognizes nearby mines. That is known. It recognizes 12 separate local field ports, she replied. The center chair is not sending into them. They run under the floor toward the aperture. I crouched beside the nearest alcove. Its seat was smaller than the central cradle, and shaped for no current species. 4 shallow depressions could have held limbs or tools. Along the back, the ivory material carried a pattern of worn contact points beneath centuries of ceremonial cloth. Keeper, what do witnesses do during activation? They place one hand against the alcove and speak the pilot's name. Why? So the anchor does not die unremembered. Who wrote that ritual? Survivors of the first reopening? After the builders vanished? Yes. Then the ritual is not original operating procedure. Eric's sensory fans opened, showing lines of deep blue anger. The ritual is older than your species' presence among the stars. Age can preserve truth. It can also preserve an emergency workaround. Help me learn which one this is. The chamber shook again. Ashlight relay orbited a dead star whose gravity bent the Charon veil into a natural fold. The ancient builders had fixed their aperture around that fold, creating a road through a region ordinary drives could not cross. 3 days earlier, a dark matter shear collapsed the route while the Palehaven evacuation convoy was inside the far pocket. 83 ships emerged at a dead-end beacon with no path forward and not enough reaction mass to return. The convoy had fled a poisoned moon. Its filters were already old. They could not wait for us to honor certainty. Admiral Mer descended from the gallery with 2 council officers. You have 30 minutes to establish a testable alternative. After that, Mission Command prepares the canonical activation. Who sits in the chair if you remove me? His skin paled. Pilot Dovik Wren is reserve anchor. Dovik stood in the service arch. He was broad even for an Orden, with 2 heavy arms and a face protected by natural plates. He met my eyes without looking away. I volunteered, he said. I know. My daughter is on Palehaven 6. I know that too. Do not spend her air proving you dislike the shape of my choice. There was no contempt in his voice. That made the warning harder to dismiss. Give me 30 minutes, I said. If I find nothing, I take the chair, not you. Commanders are not more expendable than pilots. Agreed. I was selected first and remain first. Admiral Mer approved the interval. Eric's did not approve. He simply watched while May and I traced the passive field beneath the alcoves. The ivory floor could not be cut without risking the relay. We used thermal gradients, acoustic taps, and a strip of polarized foil from May's case. 12 pathways curved inward from the alcoves, passed beneath the central cradle, and joined a braided conductor leading to the aperture. The central chair's 16 contacts divided among those pathways. 4 carried sensory phase from the aperture. 12 connected to the alcove braid. The center does not feed the witnesses, May said. The witnesses feed the center. Eric's lowered himself beside us. That interpretation contradicts every activation record. Every modern record, I said. What happened at the first reopening? He looked toward the memorial corridor. The builders had been absent for 6,000 years. 12 successor peoples found Ashlight during a famine migration. The route was closed. They translated enough of the control archive to seat 1 navigator in the central cradle. The alcoves would not accept the others. Why not? Their minds were incompatible. May sat back. Of course. Admiral Mer checked the time. Explain. The builders were a linked species, she said. Not one mind, but one neural signal grammar. 12 operators could share sensory phase without exposing content. The successor peoples had different cortical rhythms and no translation layer. The center chair probably gathered a braided identity from 12 compatible operators. The first reopening had to force the whole burden through 1 navigator because only 1 species at a time could pass the interface test. Modern interspecies links translate rhythm, I said. For medicine, joint piloting, and disability support, not ancient transit control. Can they? May looked at the 12 alcoves. Maybe. Admiral Mer's color went dark again. A maybe is not an alternative. Not yet. Eric's touched the closest alcove. If the center receives a braid, why do modern activations succeed with 1 pilot? May answered. The adapter duplicates 1 mind across all 12 paths. The chair makes 12 phase copies until the pilot's neural tissue cannot hold coherence. The fatal load is not energy, I said. It is repetition. The central cradle did not burn pilots with radiation or current. It forced one brain to maintain 12 slightly different versions of the same sensory timing, while ashlight aligned the route. Neural inflammation, seizure, and autonomic collapse followed. Medical records called it anchor dissolution, because that sounded older than organ failure. Spread across 12 separate minds, each person would hold one timing path. The central cradle would still need someone to combine them. I looked at the chair. I take the first position, I said. The rest of the volunteer crew takes the alcoves. Dovik counted. Our mission crew has 12 including you. That leaves one alcove empty if you occupy the center. May can link from an alcove and supervise translation remotely through the service bus. Then 11 feeds plus center, May said. The relay has 12 branches. Eric's looked at the final empty seat. I will take it. Admiral Mayer refused immediately. You are the only certified keeper, which is why I understand the relay's sensory language. You are not mission crew. Then add me. His fans folded again, but not from anger. He had spent his life tending the names of people who died in that room. If the alcoves had once been controls, his ritual was built around a mistake. Entering one meant risking his body and his identity at the same time. I did not call his choice brave, not yet. No one joins until we test separation, I said. We need to prove the link shares timing without sharing memory or command. Dovik stepped closer. 30 minutes ended. Admiral Mayer looked at the mission clock. 11 hours. 9 minutes until the first convoy failure. The canonical activation needed 5 hours of preparation, because the central cradle's lethal adapter had to be charged slowly. A distributed link could prepare faster if it worked. You have 2 hours, he said. At the end, I require a measured load below survivable limits, independent medical approval, and a complete fallback. If any condition fails, Commander Wren enters the central cradle under the manual. Fallback means I die? I asked. Fallback means the convoy lives. Then write both meanings in the order. He did. We moved from the sacred chamber into Ashlight's archive hangar. Eric's unlocked cabinets that had remained sealed through his 31 years as keeper. Inside lay plain physical objects recovered from the builder's vanished settlements. Relief canisters, habitat joints, child-sized breathing masks, agricultural membranes, and control components whose functions had become legend. The current manuals treated them as memorial evidence that the builders had once protected dependent worlds. May treated them as spare parts with provenance. This is a phase isolator, she said, lifting a gunmetal ring from an ivory crate. 12 channels, Eric's corrected her. It is called the Circle of Last Voices. Does it isolate phases? The archive description says it allowed many households to speak through one shelter wall during storms. Then yes. The ring had no readable labels. Its surface carried shallow wear where cables once attached. We placed passive pickups around it and pulsed harmless timing signals through 12 ports. Each emerged aligned to a common carrier, while content remained separated. The builders had left exactly the component our modern links needed. Not a weapon, not a secret resurrection machine. A piece of relief infrastructure, designed so crowded shelters could share one emergency channel without losing individual voices. Eric stared at the traces. We kept it behind glass, he said. You kept it intact, I replied. That matters. May connected the phase isolator between 12 modern medical links. We did not attach people. First, we used signal generators shaped from recorded voluntary neural patterns. Each pattern carried a simple motor rhythm and a private data stream represented by noise. The isolator aligned the motor rhythm. Private streams remained separate. Leakage? I asked. 0.003%, May said. Below ordinary medical bridge exposure. Relay tolerance? Eric's opened a maintenance record older than the continuity manual. Common phase may vary by 2.1% before rejection. Our link sat far inside tolerance. The first testable alternative existed. It did not yet include living fear. I gathered the mission crew in the archive hangar. 12 of us had arrived aboard the rescue cutter Common Measure. We represented 8 species and 5 governments. None had volunteered for neural sharing. They had volunteered to repair a relay, escort refugees, and, if required, witness one commander die. I explained the original braid, the first reopening workaround, the isolator, the privacy boundary, and the unknowns. The plan works only if every active alcove has a person, I said. Each holds one timing path. I hold the central integration path and the first surge. May manages phase translation from her alcove. Eric's understands the relay language in the 12th. If anyone withdraws before activation, we do not pressure them. We redesign or return to the written fallback. Sarah Kell, our Vaden physician, raised one scaled hand. What is predicted neural dose? May displayed physical meter bars without pretending they were certainty. Center peak, 18% of known reversible injury threshold for 4 seconds, then 9% sustained. Alcoves between 6 and 11% depending on sensory compatibility. Translation failure could double local load before automatic open. Automatic open, designed by whom? Us, May said. Tested on whom? No one yet. Sarah looked at me. Then no one consents yet. Agreed. Dovik Ren folded his heavy arms. My daughter has 10 hours of air. What living test satisfies you? Low power link among volunteers with the relay disconnected, Sarah said. 1 minute. Shared timing task. Independent cognition checks during and after. Any memory leakage ends the plan. Toranish, our power engineer, asked, what timing task? I placed 12 metal taps on a work table. We keep 1 beat without hearing each other. Eric's looked at the ancient phase isolator. The builder's shelter cadence used 5 beats, he said. 4 together, 1 separate to prove the households remained distinct. Use it. We had 12 mission crew plus Eric's. Every person volunteered for the low-power test. That did not commit anyone to activation. We fitted medical links under Sarah's supervision. May routed only timing and blocked language, image, motor command, and affect. I sat in the central test harness with an emergency release in both hands. The others formed a circle around the archive ring. 4 together, May said. 1 separate. The link closed. I felt no thoughts. I felt intervals. 12 presences existed around me as pressures without direction, like people holding separate lines attached to one floating object. The first common beat arrived. We tapped together. The second came faster. The third carried a hesitation from somewhere I could not identify. The fourth aligned. Then every person created 1 separate beat at a self-chosen moment. The isolator preserved them as distinct gaps inside the common carrier. For 1 minute, we shared timing without becoming a shared mind. Sarah opened the link. Name, role, last private memory before test, she said to each of us. We answered independently. My memory was a kitchen on Mars where my father taught me to repair a pressure valve using a spoon, because he had misplaced every correct tool. Dovik remembered his daughter's first solo landing. May remembered a song and refused to identify it. Eric's remembered polishing the memorial lamp beneath pilot Avon Rowe's portrait. No one else knew those details. Privacy held. The timing trace showed our common error below 1%. Admiral Murr studied the result from the hangar door. You have a link, he said. You do not have an activation. We have 1 hour left in your test window, I replied. Palehaven just revised air reserve. Koru Dayan, our convoy liaison, opened the message. 3 clinic transports had discovered carbon scrubber contamination from the poisoned moon. Their safe reserve fell from 10 hours to 7 hours, 26 minutes. They carried 8,100 people, including the convoy's neonatal ward. The canonical single-pilot adapter required 4 hours 40 minutes to charge from its current state. Our distributed link could be ready in 2. If it failed, we would no longer have time to prepare the canonical path. The better way had become the only way before it had become safe. Admiral Murr convened mission authority in the archive hangar, because none of us wanted to waste time walking to the council gallery. He placed the canonical order on one table, and our test trace on another. The written fallback can still begin now, he said. Its preparation completes with 2 hours, 46 minutes of clinic reserve remaining. Commander Wren enters the center cradle. The route opens with the established probability. Established probability of opening? Sarah asked. 91%. Probability of her survival? Mare's color faded, 0 across 46 records. Then state both when asking us to compare. He did. Our distributed design had no activation probability because it had never been attempted. May estimated the isolator would preserve phase. Eric's estimated ashlight would recognize 12 alcove signals plus the central integrator as a builder braid. Sarah estimated reversible injury if the load stayed within model. Every estimate depended on assumptions drawn from artifacts, low-power timing, and a machine older than our civilizations. I asked each crew member to leave the hangar one at a time and speak privately with Sarah. No commander, admiral, family member, or other volunteer listened. She explained known risks, unknown risks, the fallback, the refugee clock, and the right to refuse without losing position or honor. The process consumed 32 minutes. Admiral Murr hated every one of them. Collective consent could be taken once, he said. Collective danger does not erase individual bodies. Delay also harms individual bodies beyond the veil. Yes, record the delay. Do not use it to make silence count as agreement. The first person returned from Sarah's interview was Bex Lomar, our field mechanic. Bex belonged to a low-gravity species whose 4 slender arms could reach relay conduits the rest of us could not enter. He placed his tool roll beside Alcove 3. I consent to the distributed activation, he said. I do not consent to memory transfer, emotional transfer, motor command, or continued link after route threshold. May recorded the limits. Neri Tav, sensor specialist, returned next. She consented, on condition that her cradle release remain physically reachable by her own lower hand. Sol Avern, rescue officer, required an automatic open if his heart rhythm exceeded the medical boundary for more than 2 seconds. Veli Osa, translation and protocol officer, consented only after Eric's agreed that speaking no ritual name during activation would not be treated as dishonor. Torin Ish wanted his power channel isolated from motor control. Para Nim, our Kesh structural analyst, asked for the alcove shell around her to remain physically unlatched. Her species went rigid when startled, and a powered restraint could turn a harmless reflex into an injury. Bex demonstrated the manual support hinge twice. Para tested it with her own 3-jointed hands, then consented. Yara Meln, environmental technician, asked whether a withdrawal during activation would kill the others. It could increase their loads, May said. The link must open all channels if any one person releases. Then my release stops the mission. Yes. Will anyone be able to override me? No. Yara looked at Admiral Murr. Including him? Including me, he said. She consented. Koru Dayan had relatives in the Palehaven convoy. He took longer than anyone else. When he returned, he declined. No one spoke. The link test gave me a panic response, he said. I concealed it because I wanted the trace to pass. Sarah found the respiratory change. In a full relay field, I may release without warning. Admiral Mare's hands closed around the edge of the table. Koru faced him. My sister and her children are on Palehaven 12. I understand the clock. I still decline the cradle. Accepted, I said before anyone could make the word difficult. We had 11 people for 12 positions. The canonical fallback had 43 minutes left before preparation could no longer meet the clinic reserve. Dovik Wren stepped toward the central chair. I take the missing alcove and remain reserve anchor if the braid fails before activation. You were already in the crew count, May said. Koru's departure still leaves one empty. Admiral Mare said, I will take it. His council officers objected together. He raised one hand. I demanded a measurable alternative. It exists. I demanded individual consent. You provided it. I cannot then place the last unknown risk on a subordinate, merely because command architecture calls me necessary elsewhere. You command the rescue force, I said. Commander Wren, you command this mission and intend to enter the highest load position. Do not offer me my own argument. He had earned that. Sarah interviewed him privately. He returned and consented with one condition. If the route opened and his cradle failed, no ship could delay refugee passage to recover him. Rejected, I said. His skin darkened. It is my condition. You can refuse rescue for yourself after we assess it. You cannot pre-order the crew to abandon a reachable person without data. Our mission priorities already place the convoy first. That is sufficient. A recovery attempt could close the route. Then we will not attempt it. If it cannot affect the route, we will. No glorious assumptions in either direction. He considered withdrawing. Then he amended the condition. Refugee passage would not be delayed beyond safe route margin for his recovery. I accepted. All 12 positions had volunteers. Koru did not leave the mission. He became external link monitor, the one person who had felt panic strongly enough to identify its first signs. Sara placed him beside the physical all-open control. If any medical trace departed consent boundaries, he could end the braid. You are giving the refusal control to the person who refused, one council officer said. He proved he would use it, Sara replied. The canonical preparation window closed. Admiral Mayer sent the decision to Palehaven, with every probability and unknown attached. The convoy council could object, but transmission delay through the damaged beacon was 19 minutes each way. We could not wait for a full debate. Their existing rescue request authorized Mission Command to choose any method that did not intentionally destroy refugee vessels. Palehaven's first reply arrived as a simple statement from convoy speaker Lale Sorn. We understand the single anchor method is no longer available. We understand the distributed method is unproven. We request that no crew member be compelled by our air clock. Open the route if you judge it possible. If you cannot, preserve the reasons so another convoy does not inherit our silence. Dovik listened twice. His daughter did not appear in the message. She always speaks like a council, he said. Your daughter? Speaker Sorn. He had not mentioned that Palehaven's elected speaker was his daughter. The manual portrait waiting for a sacrificial pilot would have described him as a father dying for one child. It would have omitted that she commanded 61,000 people and had just protected our consent while her heir failed. We began physical preparation. The 12 alcoves had not carried full neural load since the builders vanished. 6 responded to diagnostic phase immediately. 3 required cleaning at contact seams. 2 had damaged isolation ribs. Alcove 11 returned no signal at all. Bex crawled beneath it through a service gap 6 centimeters wider than his chest. His suit camera showed orderly gunmetal conduits arranged behind ivory panels. No labels marked them. The builders used shape and position rather than writing in service spaces. Branch conductor separated, he reported. Old fracture. Someone bridged it toward center. Eric's opened the first reopening maintenance account. The survivors had found Alcove 11 unresponsive. Believing it ceremonial, they redirected its conductor into the central cradle to strengthen the single navigator. Later keepers copied the bridge whenever they replaced a floor segment. The center chair carried not 12 duplicates, but 13. One path had been doubled for thousands of years. Did Pilot Avenroe sit in Alcove 11's branch position? May asked. Eric's checked her medical trace. Her highest inflammation occurred along the sensory region mapped to this conductor. The bridge had not created the sacrifice rule. It had made every death faster. Eric's lowered his head. I supervised the last replacement, he said. I ordered the bridge preserved. You followed the only known diagram, I replied. I taught visitors that each gold seam represented a pilot's unbroken resolve. One seam hid the wire that harmed them. Then help us remove it. Bex could not reach the old junction safely with powered tools. The conductor lay against an active relay membrane that reacted to electromagnetic fields. He used a plain ceramic cutter from the archive's shelter kit. Eric's guided him through the builder geometry. Together they separated the bridge and restored Alcove 11 to its original path. The central cradle's passive burden fell by 7.7%. That was not enough to make one pilot safe. It was enough to prove maintenance history mattered. May built the modern link around the ancient shelter isolator. 12 medical bridge units connected to its physical ports. Each unit translated a volunteer's neural timing into a neutral carrier. Content blockers operated locally, so no central command could open private channels. Mechanical releases broke power and signal together. The relay still needed a common identity at the center. We created the smallest one possible. Each volunteer chose a simple sensory fact they were willing to share. Pressure against a palm, a tone, the feeling of one breath beginning, the position of a foot. The link reduced those facts to timing without content. In the center cradle, I would receive only their alignment. My job was not to think 12 thoughts. It was to hold the boundary that said these 12 rhythms belonged to one cooperating crew for the purpose of opening one route. The relay may reject a temporary identity, Veliosa said. Then it stays closed, I replied. It may try to deepen the link. Local blockers open. It may interpret opening as loss of continuity and increase force. May pointed to the all-open breaker beside Koru. Then every channel leaves together. The center cannot copy an absent signal, unless the ancient adapter retains it, Eric said. We had nearly missed that. The central cradle contained a memory buffer designed to preserve phase through brief operator interruption. In canonical activation, it copied the pilot's last pattern and drove it back into the brain when contact returned. A release could therefore reopen the link carrying a stored identity, violating consent, and possibly seizing motor control. The buffer had no software switch. Its physical core sat inside the chair base, surrounded by the 16 conductors I noticed at the start. Removing it would disable canonical activation permanently. Admiral Murr called the Decision Council. If distributed activation fails, he said, Ashlight may require a future single anchor. Destroying the buffer removes that possibility. Leaving it makes our releases false, Sara said. Can it be physically bypassed without removal? Bex examined the base. A bypass reconnects if the cradle resets. Removal is the only verifiable state. Eric's held the archive key that opened the chair. 46 pilots had entered it, believing the restraint and release belonged to them. The buffer meant the machine could call them back for seconds after they tried to leave. None of the medical reports knew. Remove it, Eric said. You hold heritage authority, Admiral Mare told him. Do you understand the decision may prevent use under the continuity manual? The manual calls a copied mind continuous. The people in the portraits were not copies. I will not preserve an artifact by giving it another body. He opened the base. The buffer core was a small ivory cylinder nested in gold conductor loops. It looked less important than the relief mask stored beside it. Bex photographed its position, Neri recorded passive state, and Eric's placed it in an isolation crate. We did not destroy it. We made it unable to reconnect without a public physical action. The central chair recognized the missing buffer and displayed a fault through a sequence of light, not text. Eric's answered with an older maintenance cadence from the archive. The chair shifted into builder braid mode. 12 alcoves illuminated. Warm gold light traveled from each seat toward the center, stopped at the phase isolator, and emerged as one high-key white band leading to the sealed aperture. The supposed witness stations had become controls again. The archive hangar filled with rescue crew, council observers, and cameras. Eric's ordered the cameras off. Why? Admiral Mare asked. Consent test. No one performs for history. We ran a 1% live relay test. The aperture remained sealed. Ashlight generated only enough sensory phase to recognize operators. I entered the central cradle. The others took their alcoves. Eric's occupied 11, the branch he had repaired. Mare occupied 12. Koru stood at the all-open breaker. The chest restraint settled above me. No lock, I said. Bex removed its retaining pin. The restraint became a support I could lift myself. Sara checked every medical trace. May checked local blockers. Each volunteer stated consent again. Koru repeated the stop rule. Any boundary, any person, all open, no override. I closed the center contacts. Ashlight noticed us. Cold pressure entered behind my eyes. 12 timing paths arrived from the alcoves. My own palms carried only the central integration signal. For an instant, the relay tried to copy me down every branch. May's isolator resisted. The pressure divided. I felt the crew as intervals. Dovik held a slow, heavy beat. Eric's carried a fine tremor that settled when the relay showed him builder phase. Admiral Mare arrived too quickly, corrected, and remained. May's own timing pulsed at the edge, adjusting translation without controlling anyone. The common band formed. Then an image entered my mind. A small child stood beneath a blue tree. It was not my memory. I pulled my release. Koru opened all channels before I could speak. The chest restraint lifted. The image vanished. Memory leak, Sara said. Every volunteer underwent recall checks. Dovik recognized the child. My daughter, Lale, age 4. No one else had received the image. I had because the center integration path allowed content from Dovik through one branch. May found the leak in his medical bridge. Orden neural timing encoded visual memory along the same carrier their motor systems used for balance. Her blocker treated it as non-content because human neurology separated those functions. The failure did not mean distributed control was impossible. It meant our first definition of privacy was human-shaped. Dovik removed his link contacts. I will not continue if my memories become mission equipment. Accepted, I said. His faceplates tightened. Do not say it like I am leaving. Fix it. May and Sarah worked with him to isolate the Ordan balance signal through pressure timing instead of cortical rhythm. We retested the bridge with Dovik awake and disconnected from the relay. The child image remained private. Other species demanded their blockers be rebuilt from their own neurology, not adapted from May's human template. Veli's language centers encoded emotional pitch. Eric's sensory fans stored spatial memory. Neri's lower heart rhythm carried threat recognition. Every shortcut risked turning a person's private life into common control data. The rebuild consumed 58 minutes. Palehaven's clinic reserve fell to 5 hours, 31. Admiral Mayer did not tell us to hurry. He sat with a neural specialist from his own species and defined what his timing signal could reveal. The second 1% test lasted 90 seconds. No memory crossed. No motor command crossed. All 13 people maintained independent recall and could release. Center load peaked at 12% of reversible threshold, lower than modeled after removing the doubled branch. Alcove loads ranged from 4 to 8. Ashlight recognized the braid. The aperture's black surface rippled once. For less than a second, stars beyond the Charon veil appeared. Then the test ended and darkness returned. We had proved the better way could touch the road. We had 4 hours, 53 minutes to open it fully and pass 83 ships. Ashlight's activation sequence had 6 physical stages. The continuity manual named them calling, binding, ascent, stillness, surrender, and remembrance. Those words described what a single pilot experienced, not what the relay did. Eric's translated the older maintenance lights into functions. First, the relay sampled both ends of the collapsed route. Second, it aligned the aperture with the far beacon. Third, it raised field energy around the fold. Fourth, it required a continuous operator phase while testing possible paths. Fifth, it committed one path and opened the transit surface. Sixth, it transferred route stability from neural control into the relay's physical rings. The pilot deaths occurred during stages 4 and 5. The manual's final remembrance continued for 91 seconds after neural control was no longer necessary, because ritual had replaced measurement. We rewrote the sequence as actions and stop conditions. Sampling lasted 48 seconds. Any cradle above 10% reversible load stopped it. Alignment lasted 72 seconds. Phase disagreement above 2.1% opened every link. Field rise lasted 54 seconds. Ashlight could not deepen content access. Path testing lasted 66 seconds. Every person had to confirm self and release control at 3 checkpoints. Commitment lasted 41 seconds. I held the first position and highest integration load. If I released, all channels opened. Physical transfer lasted 31 seconds. Neural control ended at its start, not at the ceremonial timer's 0. The total remained 5 minutes, 12 seconds. No stage became safer because we gave it a plain name. It became easier to ask what each second required. Eric's objected when I removed remembrance from the operating sequence. The names steady witnesses, he said. Then speak them outside control. The pilot hears the final names and knows the route held. The pilot is unconscious or dying by then. His fans drew tight. I spoke Avon Rowe's name, he said. Her eyes moved. Did her medical trace show awareness? No. Then you spoke for yourself and the witnesses. That can still matter. It does not belong inside a lethal delay. Eric's looked toward the isolated buffer core. If all 13 of us survive, who receives remembrance? The people who built the road, the 46 who died, the crew opening it, the refugees crossing. Remembrance does not need a corpse to know where to stand. He did not answer, but he moved the ritual 91 seconds outside neural control. Palehaven sent detailed ship states through the damaged beacon. We built the passage order around air, drive reliability, and hull stress rather than prestige. 14 clinic transports would cross first. 5 nursery barges led the 29 habitat ships that followed in 3 groups. 18 passenger liners came next. 12 food and utility scows crossed around the weakest engines so tugs could assist. 10 tugs came last because they held the far beacon alignment and could not all leave until the route supported itself. 83 ships. The aperture needed 73 minutes to pass them at safe separation. Ashlight's physical rings could hold a committed route for 86 if undamaged. We had 13 minutes of margin. The dark matter shear had already damaged 2 ring sectors. Torin-ish inspected them with Bex and found microfractures along 4 field ribs. Under full activation, the ribs would carry alternating tension. The manual permitted operation because strain remained below original builder limits. Those limits assumed intact material, not 80,000 years of repair. "We can reinforce with common measures landing spars," Beck said. "Removing them prevents our cutter from docking after activation," Solivern replied. "We can use tug capture. If the tugs cross last, none remain here." Admiral Murr offered 2 rescue force cruisers to hold the cutter. Their military clamps used active field control that could disturb Ashlight during route commitment. We chose physical landing spars. Common measure would become unable to dock without assistance. That cost belonged to our crew and did not shift danger to the refugees. Bex removed 6 spars, shaped them into braces, and fixed them across the relay ribs with cold clamps. Neary placed strain threads along each brace. We did not call the repair permanent. It had to last 86 minutes. At 3 hours, 57 before clinic failure, Palehaven 6 reported a carbon spike. Its scrubbers had degraded faster than projection. Dovik's daughter moved the neonatal ward from 6 into 2 neighboring clinic ships using sealed transfer tubes. The move used air. It also divided the children across working filters. "She should cross first," Dovik said. "She placed herself on the last clinic ship," Koru answered. "Of course she did. Convoy Council can overrule. Do not ask them. She is the speaker. Let her carry what she asked others to carry." Dovik's voice held pride and anger in equal measure. He returned to Alcove 4 and tested his local release again. Palehaven also asked whether the route could open partially before commitment. A narrow aperture might pass data, air capsules, or small craft. Eric's found no safe partial mode. The 1% ripple had appeared because the relay sampled the far beacon. Anything with mass would destabilize it and could seal the fold permanently. We sent that answer with the raw test trace. Speaker Sorn replied, "Understood. We will not place a child in an experimental capsule to make waiting look active." The convoy conserved air. Lights went out aboard empty holds. Crews stopped non-essential movement. Habitat gardens received enough circulation to preserve oxygen production, but decorative pools froze. Ship councils opened every ration decision. No captain lowered another vessel's allocation without public need. They were already practicing distributed survival before meeting our link. Our final medical simulation exposed a different problem. The center integration load did not distribute evenly by species. Eric's sensory timing aligned almost perfectly with Ashlight and reduced my burden. Admiral Murr's Varesh rhythm arrived 1.8% late through May's translator. The relay compensated by pulling harder on his channel. His predicted load rose to 14%. Above our voluntary limit of 11, but below reversible injury threshold. "I amend my consent to 14, he said. Sarah refused. Consent cannot move every time the machine asks more. The limit exists because judgment changes under deadline. My physiology tolerates 20. Your individual scan shows old neural scarring from combat link use. 12 is my medical ceiling. Then set 12. The model predicts 14. Mayor looked at the mission clock. "We need 12 positions." Koru stood beside the all-open breaker. I could take his alcove. "You declined," I said. "I declined under panic risk. I have monitored 2 tests. I know the boundary now." "Your family clock did not get less coercive." "No, but my information changed." Sarah interviewed him again. He still felt panic when the link closed. He could identify it early and maintain function during low-power exposure. Full activation remained unknown. Mayor did not want to relinquish the seat. Koru did not want to take it as a symbolic redemption for refusing. We tested a third option. May changed the Varesh translator from neural rhythm to skin color pulse, a signal Mare's species used involuntarily to regulate social coordination. Local blockers reduced it to timing. His link delay fell below 1%. Predicted load dropped to 9. Mare kept alcove 12. Koru kept the breaker. The solution came from adapting the system to a body, not replacing the body. At 2 hours 50 before clinic failure, Ashlight's far beacon sample weakened. The last Palehaven tugs had been holding a triangular formation around the dead-end beacon. Reaction mass fell below their original projection. One tug shut an engine to conserve fuel. The beacon drifted 3 kilometers from the fold focus. Ashlight could align to it, but route margin fell from 13 minutes to 7. Send one rescue ship through first, to stabilize their beacon, Admiral Murr said. The clinic order uses every early slot, Koru replied. One rescue cutter displaces one clinic transport by 90 seconds. It restores 6 minutes of route margin. The arithmetic favored him. Speaker Sorn objected when the proposal arrived. A military ship will consume aperture shear that 3 clinic hulls could share, she said. Our tugs can hold 7 minutes. Your tug fuel says 5 under variance, Murr replied. Then send an uncrewed stabilizer. Ashlight could not pass an active remote controller during the first 2 minutes. A crew would be required to guide it. Dovik proposed taking a stripped service skiff through immediately after route commitment. Its mass was 1/6 of a clinic transport. He could attach to the far beacon, transfer fuel, and clear the path before the first medical ship reached it. You are in Alcove 4, I said. Neural control ends 31 seconds before the route opens fully. I can reach the skiff in 4 minutes. The first clinic ship crosses at 3. Then someone else pilots. Koru said, I will. His refusal no longer looked like absence from risk. He would remain outside the link, watch our medical boundaries, then take a small untested transit to stabilize his family's route. Can you fly the builder aperture? I asked. Dovik trained me during approach. Dovik made a doubtful sound. He trained me enough to know why he doubts me, Koru added. We ran a simulator from the 1% route sample. Koru crossed inside tolerance 4 times. On the 5th, he corrected too early and touched the modeled aperture edge. Again, he said. On the 9th, his path remained centered. The skiff carried physical fuel canisters, passive clamps, and no weapons. Its controller could stay cold until the route stabilized. Koru would launch from common measure after the relay transferred control. The new passage order gained 6 minutes if he succeeded, and lost 40 seconds if he failed, without blocking the aperture. He consented to the flight separately from the neural plan. At 2 hours 12, we began charging Ashlight in builder braid mode. Unlike the canonical adapter, the distributed system did not concentrate power in the central chair. Gold light filled each alcove at the same rate. The archive phase isolator warmed inside its plane support cradle. Relief hardware designed for storm shelters carried the most important control boundary in the relay. Eric's opened the memorial corridor to the crew. We walked past 46 portraits. The first pilot's image had faded almost to ivory. The last, Avon Rowe, looked directly at the recorder with one sensory fan damaged from an earlier rescue. Beneath each portrait, a physical object remained. A glove, a navigation bead, a meal utensil, a child's carved toy, a maintenance clamp, a strip of ordinary fabric. No weapon marked any life. The ritual asks the chosen anchor to select which name is spoken last, Eric said. Why? So one pilot carries another across the threshold. I studied Avon Rowe's portrait. Speak all their names after we release. Do not put one death above another. And if one of us dies, add the name after evidence shows how. Not immediately. Immediately, we provide care. Then we determine cause. Memory should not erase investigation. Eric's touched the plane clamp beneath Avon's portrait. Keepers have sometimes opposed examination, because opening the cradle seemed to accuse the pilot of weakness. A failure analysis accuses no patient. It may accuse a keeper. Then the keeper receives evidence and due process. He looked at me with sober discomfort. Humans make remembrance administratively difficult. We also bring food. May had packed meal bars. Eric's accepted one. We ate in the memorial corridor because full activation required stable blood chemistry, and no one became more respectful by fainting. Sarah performed final scans. Every volunteer named one person authorized to make medical decisions if they lost capacity. Every person restated release limits. May sealed local blocker settings so I could not change them from the center. Koru tested the all-open breaker under full charge isolation. It worked mechanically. The mission clock reached 1 hour 47 before Palehaven 6's predicted failure. The clinic fleet had already redistributed patients. The number no longer meant 8,000 people lost at once. It meant the first ship would exceed safe carbon exposure. Then, another 17 minutes later, we had enough time to open the road, and not enough to fail twice. Admiral Mayer sent one final public order. Ashlight mission will attempt distributed activation with 13 independent volunteers. Commander Cassia Wren holds central integration and first surge. No participant may be compelled to remain linked. Any release opens all channels. Refugee passage takes priority after physical route transfer. External monitor Koru Dian holds medical stop. This order supersedes the continuity manual for this activation only. He did not call the plan safe. He called it authorized. We entered the control chamber. The 12 alcoves shone with high white evidence light, edged in warm gold. Gunmetal relay ribs curved toward the black aperture. Beyond it, the trapped convoy's beacon appeared as a faint blue point through damaged phase. Eric's took alcove 11. Mayer took 12. May settled into 2 with the archive isolator beside her. Bex took 3, Dovik occupied 4, and Sarah took 6, so her own body became part of the medical data she interpreted. Torin, Veli, Neri, Sol, Yara, and Para filled the remaining seats. I entered the central cradle. The restraint rested across my chest without a lock. Koru stood beside the all-open lever and the launch path to his skiff. "Commander," he said, "state private identity." Cassia Wren, human, mission commander. I remember a pressure valve, a spoon, and my father laughing when the seal finally held. I do not consent to sharing that memory. Each volunteer stated a private fact without describing it. The statements established that separate people entered the link. Eric spoke last. Eric's Vol, Talarin, keeper of Ashlight. I remember every name in the corridor, and do not consent to becoming one today. Koru placed his hand on the lever. Activation in 10 seconds. The mechanical timer above me moved to 5 minutes. 12. The same number had preceded 46 deaths. I rested both palms against the central contacts. "If this works," Dovik said through ordinary audio, "I am telling Lale it was my plan." "She will request documentation," Koru replied. "Then I am doomed." The crew laughed once. It was not heroic laughter. It was 13 nervous bodies, using breath while they still controlled it. 3, Koru said. 2, 1, link. Cold pressure entered behind my eyes. 12 paths opened. The timer began to fall. At 5 minutes, 12 seconds, Ashlight sampled the collapsed route. The black aperture remained dark, but sensory phase arrived through the center contacts. It did not resemble sight. Distance pressed against my palms. Gravity became a slow turn behind my left ear. The far beacon felt like a weak pulse at the end of a line too long to hold. 12 crew rhythms surrounded me. May's isolator aligned them without erasing their differences. Dovik held a heavy 4-part cadence. Eric's signal fit the relay so cleanly that I felt it as open space. Admiral Mayer's translated skin rhythm arrived in warm intervals. Sarah carried the pace of one controlled breath. The others formed positions I could recognize without knowing thoughts. Ashlight tried to copy my phase into the alcoves. The isolator refused. It tried again with more pressure. My center load rose from 6% to 10. "Sampling stable," May said through audio. "Common error 1.4. Center at 10, Sarah said. "Limit 18 peak." Koru stood close enough that I heard the physical movement of his hand on the all-open lever. "Cassia, identify self." Cassia Wren, human. Center integration. 12 separate volunteers around me. The pressure stopped rising. At 4 minutes, 43, the far beacon disappeared. The line in my palms went slack. Palehaven beacon loss, Neri said. Not our receiver. The timer continued. Ashlight searched for the missing end by widening its sample. My sense of distance spread into empty branches. One pointed into a gravity well. Another ended against dark matter. A third carried the echo of some ancient route that no longer led anywhere. The builders had designed 12 operators to compare possibilities. The canonical adapter forced one pilot to feel all of them. Now each alcove received one branch. Veli rejected a dead route. Sol rejected another. Yara held a faint signal that might have been Palehaven. Dovik's branch pulled toward his daughter's convoy, but the relay did not know family, and his body did not know beacon coordinates. It was coincidence, until Neri measured carrier phase. Dovik and Yara branches correlate, she said. Difference 0.9. Bring them to center, May replied. The isolator aligned both timing signals. I felt the far beacon return as two weak pressures becoming one. At 4 minutes, 24, sampling completed. The first stage had taken exactly 48 seconds. Palehaven's beacon came back on ordinary audio 3 seconds later. One tug had shut down after a fuel manifold crack. The other two changed formation and restored signal. We did not stop. The model allowed temporary loss during sampling, and every medical trace remained below limit. Ashlight began alignment. Gunmetal rings around the aperture rotated. No motor sound reached us. The floor moved beneath the chair with the slow certainty of a planet turning. Gold light traveled through the alcoves into the archive isolator and emerged white. The crew's timing path stretched. Mer's load rose first. Alcove 12 at 10.6, Sarah reported. Stable. His limit was 12. May adjusted the Varesh translation by 2/10. Mer's signal arrived closer to common phase. Load fell to 9.8. Eric's branch moved the opposite way. Alcove 11 had been isolated from the braid for thousands of years. Restoring its conductor made Ashlight recognize a control path it had learned to ignore. The relay drove extra phase into it, testing whether the signal was real. Eric's at 9, Sarah said. 10. His limit was 10. Keeper, release if it crosses, I said. I know my condition. Say it. 10% reversible threshold, any memory content, any loss of independent release. The trace touched 10. Koru leaned on the all-open lever without moving it. 10.1, Sarah said. Stop. Eric's pulled his local release. All channels opened. The center pressure vanished so quickly that my vision flashed white. Ashlight's rings coasted to a halt. The timer froze at 3 minutes, 58. We had designed any release to stop everyone. It worked. No one blamed Eric's. Admiral Mir lifted himself from alcove 12. Can we restart from alignment? Eric's checked the relay lights. The sample remains. We do not need the first 48 seconds again. Alignment can reset. Time cost? 4 minutes to discharge the alcove paths. 72 seconds to repeat stage 2. Palehaven's first clinic failure was 1 hour 39 away. Route passage still needed 73 minutes. We had 26 minutes of operational margin beyond preparation and launch. One stop used 5. The system was doing what we asked, and the clock was making safety feel like failure. Sarah scanned Eric's. No injury appeared. His sensory fans trembled from stress. Alcove 11 drove you because it expected a duplicated center signal, May said. We removed the physical bridge, but its local phase memory remains biased. Can we erase it? I asked. Not in 4 minutes. We can invert translation so the old bias meets an equal opposite. Eric's listened. That increases uncertainty. It decreases measured load. We test at 1% before restart. Admiral Mir checked the clock and said nothing. May inverted the local carrier. Eric's re-entered 11 voluntarily. At 1% phase, his load held at 6.3. He stated identity, memory boundary, and release access. We resumed at 4 minutes, 24, on a fresh timer display synchronized to the remaining stages. The Memorial's original timer still showed 3:58. Eric's covered it with plain ivory cloth so no one followed the wrong count. Alignment began again. Alcove 11 held below 7. Mir held below 10. The far beacon stayed present. At 3 minutes 12, Ashlight aligned both apertures. For the first time, the black transit surface showed the trapped fleet. 83 vessels glimmered beyond a narrow cosmic blue corridor. Their hull lights were dim from conservation. Habitat ships clustered around clinic transports. Tugs held the failing beacon in a triangle. Behind them, the Quran veil folded darkness into ridges, like fabric under pressure. Dovik made a sound that was almost his daughter's name. Private content boundary, May warned. I know. His timing remained steady. Field rise began. The reinforced ring sectors took load. Neri reported strain thread values through audio. The first brace held at 32% rating. The second climbed to 40. The ancient rib beneath it flexed but did not crack. At 2 minutes, 51, the third brace slipped 1 millimeter. Bex felt the change through alcove 7 because his branch mapped to that ring sector. The relay translated mechanical strain into pressure along 2 upper arms. Clamp 7 walking, he said. Cold jaw not seated against lower rib. External repair crew waited outside the active field boundary. They could not approach with powered tools, and the slip would reach failure in 90 seconds under projected rise. Koru could leave the breaker and move the clamp by hand in a shielded crawlway. If he did, no one held all open control. Assign me external stop, Saul said from alcove 9. You cannot leave link, Sarah replied. Mechanical duplicate at center chair, I said. My right-hand release opens all. Koru moves. Single point stop on the highest load person, May said. For less than 40 seconds, every local release still opens. No one lost individual stop. We lost the independent observer. Koru ran. His footsteps crossed the service arch. The ring's gold light threw his shadow along the crawlway. He carried no active tool, only Bex's ceramic lever and a tether. The third brace slipped again. 2 millimeters, Neri said. Failure in 58 seconds. Koru reached the clamp. Its lower jaw floated above the ancient rib because thermal contraction shortened the landing spar after installation. Bex guided him from the alcove. Release top catch. Rotate half a hand. Seat lower first. Koru released it. The brace jumped under load. Strain shifted into the damaged rib. Neri's trace rose. 49%. 55. Seat now, Bex said. Koru drove the ceramic lever through the clamp and used his full weight. The lower jaw moved into place. He closed the catch. Strain fell to 42. Koru returned to the all-open control with 12 seconds before field rise ended. External stop restored, he said between breaths. At 2 minutes 18, all 6 braces held. Ashlight began path testing. The corridor divided into possibilities. Each alcove received a different route geometry. Some were shorter and unstable. Others bent around dark matter ridges but required more energy. The center integration path compared only timing, not images. I felt 12 answers as pressure sequences. The canonical adapter would have delivered all routes into one pilot's sensory cortex. My load rose to 13%. Center above sustained 9, Sarah said. Peak limit 18. Stage limit? 12 after 30 seconds. May redistributed comparison. Instead of every alcove sending full timing to center, neighboring pairs rejected mutually impossible routes first. Dovik compared with Yara, Eric's with Mare, Veli with Neri, Bex with Torin. Sol with Sarah. May held her own branch against mine. 5 routes disappeared before reaching me. Center load fell to 11. The method had not existed in our original plan. We changed control while linked, but no person received new content or lost release. At 1 minute 53, Veli's blocker detected emotional pitch embedded in root phase. It rejected the feature. Her branch became silent. Common error rose to 2%. The stop threshold was 2.1. Veli identify self, Koru said. Veli Osa, protocol officer. I hear no private content. My release is free. The relay route carries builder affect code my blocker removed. Eric's understood. Not effect. Priority wait. The builders marked shelter routes by urgency through the same carrier. Can we pass priority without emotion? May asked. Convert amplitude to interval. May changed Veli's local translator with her verbal consent. The blocker remained closed to emotion. Priority returned as a longer timing gap. Common error fell to 1.3. At 1 minute 31, 2 routes remained. The shorter path could open in 38 seconds, but crossed a sheer ridge likely to damage large habitat ships. The longer path required full commitment and left only 86 minutes of stability. It was physically safer and temporally narrow. We selected the longer path. No admiral chose it for us. The linked crews measured branch comparisons converged, and I confirmed its center. At 1 minute 12, path testing ended. Commitment began. This was where prior pilots died. Ashlight stopped offering alternatives and demanded one continuous operator identity, while it reshaped the fold. The center cradle tried to draw the alcove rhythms together. The shelter isolator held them aligned and separate. My first position load climbed to 15. Cassia, limit 18 peak, 12 sustained, Sarah said. Time above 12? 6 seconds. I felt no memory and no pain, only pressure tightening behind my eyes. The central task was simple: recognize 12 signals as one crew, without pretending they were one person. May, distribute integration checks, I said. Commitment protocol assigns center only. The manual does. Does the relay reject alcove confirmations? Eric sent a builder shelter cadence from 11, 4 common beats, 1 separate. Ashlight accepted it. Other alcoves repeated the pattern. Each contributed confirmation of the chosen route. The center no longer had to duplicate it 12 times. My load fell to 13. 12 seconds above sustained, Sarah said. No injury markers. Continue to 20 maximum. She amended the exposure duration, not my load limit, based on live inflammation data. I remained below peak. At 54 seconds, Mur's signal faltered. His old combat link scar began producing a rhythmic phase despite the skin translator. Load rose in alcove 12. 11.6, Sarah said. His ceiling was 12. I hold, Mare said. State release. Right hand. Free. 11.9. Koru touched the all-open lever. May could reduce Mur's path only by moving its commitment check elsewhere. I had room below peak. Eric's had room. Dovik had room. The original plan would have sent all of it to center. Split 12 among center, 4 and 11, I said. Equal thirds. Consent? Center consents, I added. Dovik answered. 4 consents. Eric's answered. 11 consents. Mare said. 12 consents to transfer. May moved the timing burden. My load rose to 14. Dovik rose from 7 to 9. Eric's rose from 6 to 8. Mur fell to 8. No one took a lethal share. At 31 seconds, commitment completed. Neural control should have ended. The alcove lights remained white. Ashlight had not transferred route stability to the physical rings. Why are we still linked? Sarah asked. The timer continued. 30. 29. Eric's read the relay's gold light sequence. It expects an external keeper identity seal. We supplied 12 alcove seals and 1 human center integration, but the maintenance witness has not joined the braid. Our crew filled all 12 alcoves and the center function, but Ashlight still required an independent release witness. The canonical adapter copied 1 pilot across all 12 alcoves and center. We were 1 signal short. Can center supply the witness seal? I asked. May's voice tightened. You can generate a second timing path from a different voluntary sensory fact. The relay may mistake it for an external witness. Your brain carries both. Load? Unknown. 24 seconds. The route commitment could remain neural until 0. If physical transfer failed, Ashlight would either close or keep pulling after the timer. 46 pilots had remained because no one knew when control ended. No unbounded extension, Sarah said. All open at 0 regardless. Agreed, I said. We needed 1 more independent timing seal and had no neural cradle for it. Koru stood outside the link. The all-open control used a builder maintenance contact connected directly to the braid. Can the breaker contact carry timing? I asked. Eric's understood before May did. It reports the keeper's hand during activation. The builders required an external witness to prove release remained possible. The witness was never meant merely to speak a dying pilot's name. The witness was the final control. Koru, May said, place your palm on the maintenance contact. No neural link. Give 4 common pressure beats and 1 separate. Will it disable the breaker? No. Keep your fingers around the lever. Palm only. 16 seconds. Koru pressed the contact. He felt none of our minds. He tapped 4 times with the crew cadence and once at his own interval. The missing gold path illuminated. Ashlight recognized 12 operators, 1 center integrator, and 1 external release witness. At 11 seconds, the alcove lights changed from white to warm gold. Neural pressure vanished. Physical rings took the route. Koru kept his hand on the all-open lever until every medical trace confirmed separation. Links open, May said. All 13 neural volunteers independent, Sarah said. No acute injury markers. The mechanical timer continued through 10 seconds of physical stabilization. No one remained trapped for remembrance. At 0, the Charon aperture opened. Cosmic blue depth unfolded inside the black ring. The far beacon shone at its center. Beyond it, 83 refugee ships waited with lights dim and hulls close. Every volunteer was alive. For 3 seconds, none of us moved, because survival felt like another system reading we needed to verify. Then Koru released the maintenance contact and ran for the skiff. The central restraint lifted when I pushed it. My legs did not. Sarah reached me from alcove 6 and caught my shoulder before I slid sideways. She checked my pupils, grip, speech, and private identity, while other volunteers underwent the same examination. Name, she said. Cassia Wren. Private memory. Pressure valve, spoon, father, still mine. Symptoms? Head pressure, light sensitivity, legs negotiating. Neural load peaked 14.8. No inflammatory marker above reversible band. Sit. Dovik was already trying to stand. Sarah pointed at him without looking. Sit. He sat. Admiral Mer remained in alcove 12 until his combat link rhythm stabilized. Eric's kept both hands against 11's release, staring at the warm gold path, as if it might accuse him of surviving. Keeper, I said. Identify self. Eric's Vol. Talarin. Keeper. Private memory? He looked toward the memorial corridor. Avon's lamp. Still mine. All 13 passed immediate cognition checks. Koru's skiff launched from common measure, while the timer above us sat harmless at 0. Its small chemical jets carried it toward the open aperture. No active controller could engage until he crossed the first field boundary. Route stability began at 86 minutes. Koru entering in 20, Neri said from her alcove. She had removed neural contacts but kept passive optics. The aperture showed him as a dark speck against cosmic blue. He crossed the near boundary without drift. At midpoint, the Charon veil pulled the skiff starward. He waited half a second longer than instinct wanted, then used 1 cold correction. Dovik whispered, "Good." Koru emerged beyond the far beacon. The surviving Palehaven tugs caught his passive signal. He warmed the skiff controller, matched their triangle, and transferred 2 physical fuel canisters. Route margin increased as the beacon returned to focus. Far stability plus 6 minutes, Neri said. 92 minutes total. The first clinic transport entered at route minute 3. It was a broad ivory vessel with external carbon filters bolted along both sides. Palehaven had turned off every unnecessary light. Only a line of warm windows marked occupied wards. Ashlight's aperture bent around it. For 4 seconds, the ship became 3 overlapping shapes. Then it emerged into our hangar space intact. Rescue tugs waited beyond the active field boundary. They captured the clinic transport with physical lines and guided it toward medical docks. Common measure could not move because we had taken its landing spars, but its cargo bays opened for patients. The second clinic ship followed 90 seconds later. Then the third. No neural anchor held the route. Ashlight's gunmetal rings carried it physically. The 12 alcoves remained warm but unoccupied. Koru's external witness contact showed open. Every former pilot would have remained inside the central chair through those first crossings under the old ritual. I could watch. At minute 11, Palehaven 6 approached. Its carbon level had crossed the original safety limit. Most patients had transferred, but 63 crew remained to keep the old transport stable. Dovik stood beside me at the observation rail despite Sarah's instruction to rest. Lale left it, he said. Speaker Sorn crossed aboard Clinic 4 with the neonatal ward. She had obeyed her counsel's reassignment after discovering that remaining on 6 would force others to delay for her. You sound disappointed, I said. I taught her never to abandon a ship. She abandoned no people. Palehaven 6 entered the aperture. Its left filter rack struck a shear ripple and tore free. The rack spun into the corridor behind it. The ship rolled 2 degrees. Neri called the deviation. Rescue tugs could not project fields inside the aperture. Koru's skiff was at the far beacon, too distant. The clinic pilot used gas jets. One failed because carbon ice blocked its feed. The ship continued rolling toward the aperture edge. Ashlight's rings could shift root center by 4 meters without neural control. Palehaven 6 needed 7. We can pulse Alcove 7 mechanically, Eric said. No link. One operator pressure input moves the local ring. Bex sat in 7 before Sarah could object. Motor control only, he said. No neural contact. He placed all 4 hands on the physical depressions. The alcove recognized force timing. Eric's called the builder cadence. Bex pressed left, held, then released. The aperture shifted 4 meters. Palehaven 6 still needed 3. Alcove 8 controls the adjacent ring, Eric said. Torin took it. He mirrored Bex's pressure at lower amplitude. The 2 ring movements overlapped, moving route center 7 meters without changing total width. The clinic ship cleared the edge. It emerged rolling. Rescue tugs caught it across 3 lines and bled rotation before the hull reached common measure. All 63 crew survived. Alcoves were always post-transfer controls, May said. Eric's looked at the empty witness seats. Keepers made people stand in them and speak names while never touching the controls beneath their hands. You did not know. We did not ask. That was closer to truth. At minute 21, the first habitat group crossed. Their hulls were wider and slower than clinic vessels. Ashlight's physical rings warmed. The repaired braces carried 48% of temporary rating. Neri projected stability loss. Our 92-minute window fell to 89. The convoy needed 73 under original separation. Palehaven had tightened gaps by 4 seconds to preserve margin, increasing wake interaction but staying inside safe hull limits. At minute 34, Habitat 9 reported a failed rotation bearing. The vessel could cross, but its slow spin made one external water tank extend beyond route clearance. They could jettison the tank. It held 40% of the convoy's remaining clean water reserve. They could stop rotation completely. Doing so would shift thousands of residents from floors into restraints during transit and require 9 minutes. They could widen the route by 2%. Ashlight would lose 8 minutes of stability. Our current margin was 12. Widen, Admiral Murr said. Speaker Sorn answered from the near medical dock. The last tugs need that margin. Jettison the tank. Your convoy needs the water after rescue, Murr said. We need ships alive first. I asked Habitat 9 for the tank's physical mount. It attached on 3 radial arms. The failed bearing locked rotation relative to the hull, but the tank itself could retract if its arms compressed. They were not designed to compress. Bex studied the image. Cut 1 arm, hinge on 2, pull it against the hull. Crew exposure? External. 12 minutes. The Habitat ship had 11 before its passage slot. Delaying it moved 18 ships and consumed route margin. Koru's skiff carried a remote ceramic cutter at the far beacon. He could meet Habitat 9 before it entered. The skiff would leave beacon support for 4 minutes, reducing stability by 2. The repair could preserve water and cost less margin than widening. Speaker Sorn approved after Habitat 9's residents voted through emergency council. Koru detached, met the rotating hull, and fixed his skiff to the water tank. A Habitat worker crossed on a physical line. Together they cut the outer arm and used a hand winch to fold the tank inward. The mount held. Koru returned to the beacon with 40 seconds before the revised passage slot. Habitat 9 crossed without widening the route. At minute 42, all clinic ships, nursery barges, and the first 2 Habitat groups were safe. Common measures hangars overflowed. Rescue cruisers converted ammunition bays into temporary sleeping compartments, After removing every weapon cell, Ashlight's archive hangar became a treatment ward. Ancient relief crates were moved carefully, then opened, when Eric's discovered their sealed blankets remained intact. "They are archive objects," one assistant said. "They are blankets," Eric's replied. Refugee children slept beneath ivory fabric woven before their species evolved. Eric's placed the builder phase isolator in a transparent physical cradle above floor level, so no one in the ward touched its warm ports. Parents asked what it had done. He told them it allowed 12 people to share timing without surrendering private voices. "Human machine?" a child asked. "Builder machine," Eric said. Then he pointed toward May. "Human question. Many species answer." At minute 51, the passenger liners began crossing. Route stability fell faster than expected. Neri traced the loss to the far beacon. Koru's skiff fuel transfer had restored the tug triangle, but the dark matter shear was moving. The fold focus drifted 19 meters per minute. Palehaven's tugs could follow for another 12 minutes before crossing their own route slots. After that, the beacon would be held by no ship. Ashlight could maintain alignment without it for 8 minutes based on the initial sample. The final 10 tugs required 15 minutes to cross. We would lose the route with at least 5 tugs still beyond the veil. "Leave one tug as beacon anchor," Admiral Murr said quietly. The room changed around the sentence. The continuity manual had moved from one pilot to one tug crew. Palehaven's tug captains volunteered before anyone asked which one. Speaker Sorn refused all offers. "We did not cross 61,000 people by inventing a smaller sacrifice at the end," she said. "Without a beacon, route closes," Mare replied. "Then find another beacon." Koru's service skiff was too small to hold the fold alone. Common measure remained on our side and could not cross to replace the tugs before they left. Ashlight itself sampled the far end through 12 branches during activation. The physical rings retained that geometry. If the alcoves could adjust route center after transfer, perhaps they could update the far focus too. Eric's found the builder control pattern. It required all 12 alcoves. No neural link. Physical pressure timing only. Our volunteer crew was medically tired but conscious. The controls imposed muscle work, not cognitive phase. Sara approved 4-minute intervals with rest. We returned to the alcoves. Koru stayed at the far beacon until the last possible moment. He transmitted drift measurements through the service skiff. Neri converted them into 12 branch corrections. Eric's called cadence. Each person pressed a physical control surface, sharing the focus update across the ring. Ashlight followed the moving fold. The first tug released the beacon and entered the route. The remaining triangle narrowed. We corrected again. The second tug crossed. The far beacon weakened, but Ashlight's physical focus now carried its motion. Koru attached his skiff to tug 7 and entered with it. 3 tugs remained. Neri's hands shook against alcove 5. Saul replaced her at the next rest interval after both confirmed the branch setting. May and Veli exchanged positions. No one person remained, because tradition demanded continuity. The physical control accepted documented transfer. 2 tugs remained. Route stability showed 5 minutes. The final pair released the beacon together. Ashlight followed the extrapolated fold. Common error rose from 1% to 1.6. Threshold 2.1, May said. The first tug entered. The last was Little Harbor, an old utility vessel towing the dead far beacon housing. Its captain refused to leave the housing because it contained the convoy's complete navigation record and the final messages from 3 ships lost during the moon evacuation. The added mass slowed it. "Release the housing," Murr ordered. "It will strike the route edge and may follow us," the captain replied. "I can push it away, but I lose 30 seconds. Route stability stood at 3 minutes, 12. Little Harbor needed 2 minutes, 46 at current speed. 30 seconds removed our margin. "The messages have copies?" I asked. "Partial. Far beacon holds raw final transmissions and route evidence." The object mattered. So did the crew. "Push it starward with compressed gas," Dovik said. "No drive pulse. Begin transit immediately after separation. Gas reserve low." Koru's skiff left a canister on tug 7. "Transfer now." The canister crossed a physical line between vessels as they approached the aperture. Little Harbor vented gas against the beacon housing. The dead object moved away from route center, preserving evidence without following the tug. Little Harbor entered with 2 minutes, 39 remaining. Ashlight's branch error reached 1.9. The tug emerged near side with 37 seconds of projected stability. Rescue lines caught it. The route closed behind its stern. The mechanical timer had ended more than an hour earlier. No pilot sat in the central cradle. No tug remained beyond the veil. 83 refugee ships crossed. 61,412 people arrived. All 13 activation volunteers lived. Koru lived. The 46 portraits remained the final deaths required by the old rule. They had told us one pilot had to stay and die. I had found a better way. It worked, because no one had to trust a risk humanity would not share, and because 12 other people refused to let my first position become another name for being alone. The sentence sounded clean when I remembered it later. The hangar was not clean. Clinic ships filled every approach lane. Refugees lay beneath ancient blankets, rescue foil, cargo nets, and one another's coats. Carbon exposure left thousands nauseated and confused. Palehaven 6 arrived with its filter rack gone, and 63 crew too exhausted to stand. Common Measure had no landing spars and could not shift closer to the medical docks. Ashlight's old ventilation system struggled with 60,000 unexpected bodies. Survival became water, air, names, and floor space. Sarah assigned me to a medical cot in the archive hangar. I objected until she showed me my neural inflammation scan. The center path had remained below irreversible thresholds, but commitment produced swelling along my balance and sensory integration regions. I could walk with support and think clearly. I could not safely command traffic for 6 hours. Admiral Murr occupied the next cot. "This is undignified," he said. "Your skin is flashing 3 colors. Varesh dignity is chromatically complex." His old combat link scar had inflamed, despite the translated load transfer. Sarah expected full recovery after 2 days. Eric's temporarily lost fine control of his sensory fans. Dovik had a headache and insisted it was caused by command. May slept for 4 hours without waking when a supply crate fell nearby. Para's startled rigidity left a bruise where the open support caught her safely instead of locking her shoulder. The other volunteers showed fatigue, small inflammatory changes, or no measurable injury. No one died. No one emerged untouched. Koru landed his skiff inside Little Harbor's cargo clamp because Common Measure could not receive it. He walked directly from the tug to our cots, passed Sarah's examination, and handed me the physical beacon fuel ledger. "All tugs accounted," he said. "Your panic? Present, useful. It told me when I corrected too early. Good flying. Dovik will claim credit." "From the next cot," Dovik said. "Correct." Speaker Lale Sorn entered the hangar wearing a filter mask and carrying a sleeping infant whose parents received treatment. She passed thousands of people who tried to make space for her, and told them to remain where they were. When she reached Dovik, neither spoke. He had prepared to die for her. She had prepared to cross last among the clinics until her council overruled her. They looked at each other with the frustration of 2 people who recognized the same flaw in different mirrors. Lale placed the infant safely with a nurse, then touched her forehead to her father's. "You stayed alive," she said. "The mission required it. Do not lie during a medical exam." His faceplate softened. She turned to me. "Commander, Palehaven records request your activation order, consent conditions, load traces, route model, and all stop events. Already copied to your council." "Good. We also request the reason Clinic 6's route center shifted 7 meters. Bex and Torin used physical alcove controls after transfer. The manual says witnesses must not move inside the stations." Eric's answered from his cot. "The manual is wrong." Lale looked at him. "That will be a large report." "I have begun it." Their exchange made the rescue feel real. People who expected a miracle would have thanked us and moved on. People rebuilding a life wanted documents. Ashlight's crisis did not end with the last tug. The convoy had escaped a moon whose industrial atmosphere processors released a toxin after a control failure. Palehaven carried evidence needed to determine cause, surviving operators, displaced families, and no destination prepared for 61,000 arrivals. Admiral Murr's rescue force could distribute people among 4 temporary habitats, but separating the convoy risked losing its elected council and mutual support systems. The archive hangar contained builder relief infrastructure designed for exactly that problem. Eric's opened crates he had once considered untouchable. Plain shelter arches unfolded into pressure partitions. Agricultural membranes became temporary air scrubbers after May verified their chemistry. Relief canisters held mineral filters that still worked after careful cleaning. Child-sized masks fit none of the current species, but their adaptable seals taught medics how to reshape modern ones. We did not consume unique artifacts without recording them. We also did not preserve blankets while children shivered beneath display cases. The supposedly vanished builders remained absent. Their physical choices were present everywhere: accessible cradles, separable voices, relief hardware, mechanical releases, and structures that assumed survivors would need dignity as much as pressure. Eric's moved through the hangar with grief turning into purpose. He documented each opened crate, then asked refugees what the contents became. A habitat engineer used 2 archive arches to create a nursery ward. A Palehaven farmer joined builder membrane to a damaged algae bed. Children painted nothing on the ancient surfaces because Eric's asked them not to, then decorated removable cloth instead. A memorial can be used without being owned, he told an assistant. That sentence entered his report. Common Measure remained stranded beside the control chamber. Its removed landing spars held Ashlight's damaged ring sectors. We could recover them only after permanent braces arrived in 9 days. The cutter's life systems had become part of the temporary hospital. I declared it stationary mission infrastructure and stopped asking when I could have my ship back. Palehaven mechanics built new docking shoes from the dead Far Beacon housing after Little Harbor recovered it with a later uncrewed line. The housing contained the raw final transmissions from 3 lost evacuation ships. Families controlled access. Investigators copied navigation evidence without releasing private messages. The dead were remembered without making their voices public property. 48 hours after activation, Sarah cleared the 13 neural volunteers for a formal debrief. Koru joined us as the independent release witness. We met in the memorial corridor beneath the portraits. Every person spoke separately before hearing the others' accounts. This prevented group memory from smoothing contradictions. I remembered 12 timing pressures, route branches, and the builder identity demand at 31 seconds. May remembered the isolator resisting center duplication. Eric's remembered alcove 11 pulling him above consent limit during the first attempt. Mare remembered his rhythm failing at 54 seconds. Veli remembered priority weight arriving through a blocked emotional carrier. Koru remembered the maintenance contact warming when Ashlight accepted his pressure beats. Our time estimates differed by up to 3 seconds during commitment. The physical logs settled sequence. The old mechanical timer lagged May's clock by 8/10 after the restart. Neither became the official truth alone. The report retained both and explained the offset. Sarah documented all injuries. She rejected public statements that described us as unharmed. People will say the new method is perfectly safe, she told the debrief. It is not. Reversible injury is injury. Fatigue affects consent. The first attempt stopped at Eric's limit. The second required live redistribution. Future activation needs larger crews, lower loads, and no emergency clock if possible. Admiral Muir asked, "Do you certify the method?" I certify that this activation stayed within revised boundaries, and every participant survived. I recommend controlled testing before routine use. Not a universal replacement. A lethal manual is not the default while we test a survivable one. Ashlight remains closed except rescue until review. Eric supported her. The Mission Council issued a preservation order over the central cradle, 12 alcoves, archive isolator, removed buffer, repaired branch, and all activation records. No one could restore the canonical adapter without public authority. No one could dismantle it as a hated symbol before evidence review. Families of the 46 pilots received the records first. Their responses were not uniform. Some thanked us for ending the sacrifice. Some accused us of insulting people who chose knowingly. Some wanted the portraits removed because the ritual was built on false necessity. Others wanted every lamp left exactly where it stood. Avenro's brother arrived on the first passenger service after the route reopened. His name was Sel Rowe, an aging pilot who walked with a support frame. Eric's met him beneath Aven's portrait. "Did you know about the doubled branch?" Sel asked. "No, I preserved it during maintenance." "Did you know neural control ended before remembrance?" "The medical record suggested it. I believed the manual's requirement exceeded what instruments could show." "You kept speaking her name while she died." "Yes." Sel struck him. The blow was weak and still wrong. Security moved. Eric's raised one hand. "Do not remove him." "You do not decide assault procedure," I said. Sel stared at me. "He helped kill my sister. Evidence review will determine responsibility. You may testify, you may not hit a witness." Saying it did not reduce his grief. He accepted a separate room and counsel, rather than detention, after Eric's declined injury charges. The incident remained in the record anyway. The next day, Sel asked to see the central cradle. We showed him without ceremony. The restraint no longer locked. The buffer core sat isolated in its transparent case. The doubled branch had been cut and tagged. Aven's medical trace aligned with the excess path. "Would your plan have saved her?" he asked. "Modern links did not exist then," May said. "Removing the duplicate branch might have extended survivable time. We cannot prove she would have lived." "Could she have left after threshold?" "Physically, yes," I said. The route had transferred. The manual told her to remain. Sel gripped his support frame. "She asked me whether leaving early would shame our family. I told her 1 minute was not worth carrying doubt into history." No one absolved him with a phrase. Eric's opened Aven's unedited final medical audio under family authority. Her voice at threshold was weak but intelligible. "Route stable," she had said. "Why is the restraint still closed?" The operating keeper answered. "Remembrance remains. Hold still." The restraint could have opened. Its latch had been left engaged by procedure. Sel listened once and stopped the recording. "Put that in the report," he said. "Only with your authorization," Eric's replied. "You have it. Not the private message after. That belongs to us." The final report used the operational sentence and sealed the rest. Reviewers reconstructed all 46 activations. Early records were incomplete. 29 clearly showed route transfer before pilot death. 11 lacked enough data. 6 pilots died before transfer due adapter overload, and the route failed. The ritual had not even guaranteed the sacrifice purchased success. The report identified no single inventor of the lethal rule. First reopening survivors made a desperate workaround. Later engineers improved its reliability. Without understanding builder braid mode, keepers preserved continuity. Councils used the proven method during emergencies. Families praised courage. Manuals removed uncertainty to make missions executable. Every step made sense locally. Together they built a chair that fit each new victim. Admiral Mayer faced review for allowing an unproven activation after the canonical window closed. I faced review for using Mission Command to remove the memory buffer and alter heritage equipment. Eric's faced professional inquiry for preserving the doubled branch and failing to challenge post-threshold restraint. May faced technical review of the initial human-shaped blocker that leaked Dovik's memory. No one was praised out of accountability. My command review asked why I had promised to take the canonical chair if no alternative appeared. "Because Palehaven needed the route," I said. "Do you still believe that would have been correct?" I looked at the 46 medical traces. I believe the authority existed, and the risk to 61,000 people was immediate. I also believe my promise helped preserve the rule by treating my own death as a clean fallback instead of an engineering failure. If we had learned nothing in 30 minutes, I would have entered. That does not make the design ethical. It means emergencies can force choices that should shame the system, not glorify the person. Would you order another pilot into it? No, I could volunteer myself. I could not convert command pressure into someone else's meaningful consent while a fleet suffocated. Then your fallback was personal, not operational. Yes, that was a command flaw. The board censured me for announcing a fallback without specifying that no reserve pilot could be compelled. It upheld the distributed activation as a proportionate emergency decision, supported by testing and individual consent. Admiral Mayer received a similar finding for naming Dovik reserve anchor before reviewing whether family stakes compromised consent. Dovik objected to being described as compromised. "My daughter did not make me incapable," he said. The board changed the wording to heightened coercive pressure and kept the finding. May's review found her initial blocker met human medical standards and failed interspecies privacy. She opened every translation design, added species-controlled validation, and required future links to begin from each participant's neurology, rather than a human default. Eric's inquiry found no misconduct under the old manual. It still found professional failure to investigate contradictory medical timing and the non-functional witness alcoves. He remained keeper under a new archive council that included pilot families, engineers, refugees, and independent historians. He asked Sel Rowe to join. Sel declined at first. 3 months later, he accepted a temporary seat. The Archive Council's first dispute concerned the first reopening crew. Public anger had moved backward through history. Commentators called the 12 successor peoples cowards for placing one navigator in the center. Their descendants argued that we judged famine survivors using medical links they did not possess. Some demanded the workaround be removed from the memorial. Others wanted the first navigator declared a murdered victim rather than a willing pilot. Eric's refused both simple verdicts. The surviving record showed 12 species attempting the alcoves. The relay rejected 11 neural patterns. Their food fleet had 4 days of reserve. Engineers built the single-person adapter from shelter components and explained predicted harm to a navigator named Uru Ven. They did not know the center buffer could restore identity after release. They did know neural load might be fatal. Uru consented. The record did not show whether she could have refused without condemning her family fleet or losing status. It showed 3 other navigators volunteered after her, which meant no captain selected her by force. It also showed the council stopped testing alcoves once the adapter opened the route. They found a way that worked under a clock, I told the hearing. Their error was not failing to invent our equipment. It was allowing an emergency workaround to become final architecture after the emergency ended. The council kept the first reopening display and added the rejected alcove traces beside it. Uru remained described as a volunteer, with coercive context named and certainty limited. That phrasing guided the 46 pilot cases. Families received compensation from the governments and route authorities that benefited from lethal activations. The payments did not require calling the deaths wrongful or heroic. Medical support covered surviving relatives affected by final transmissions. Private messages remained controlled by families, not museums. Several governments resisted compensation because pilots had signed consent forms. Sarah testified that the forms omitted early route transfer, doubled branch load, retained identity buffer, and alternatives never tested. Consent to incomplete facts did not transfer all institutional responsibility to the signer. The compensation passed. No living keeper faced criminal charges for following the manual without concealed evidence. 2 former route directors were investigated for suppressing post-threshold medical anomalies. One had deleted raw traces to protect pilot dignity. The other kept them but rejected review requests as sacred material. Courts imposed evidence sanctions and barred both from safety authority. Neither received a theatrical prison sentence unsupported by intent. The Central Operating Trust accepted collective liability. It funded open archives, independent medical review, manual access training, and the standing pool. Insurance contracts could no longer classify a pilot body as consumed activation material. That phrase had appeared in 14 policies. Eric's placed a copy of one policy beside the removed buffer. "This is text," Ona objected during exhibit review. "Visitors may mistake a legal document for the main proof." "Then keep it in the optional archive," he said. "The physical buffer and branch show what the words did." The public floor remained uncluttered. Sel Rowe's temporary council term became useful during one final disagreement. Some families wanted the central chair destroyed. Operators wanted it preserved for evidence. Engineers wanted to use its ivory shell as material for new control surfaces because matching builder matter was scarce. Sel proposed separating functions. The chair stayed structurally intact and disconnected. Small, removable non-evidentiary trim pieces were analyzed to manufacture compatible surfaces. No original control path was consumed. Operators trained on replicas. "A compromise," Eric said, sounding suspicious. Do not become attached to purity, Cell replied. They worked together for 3 years without becoming friends. Trust did not require rewriting their first meeting. Palehaven did not stay at Ashlight permanently. 4 habitats in Admiral Mur's systems opened coordinated settlement places while preserving the Convoy Council. Families chose destinations rather than being assigned by ship number. Some remained near the relay to help build a rescue station. Dovik went with Lale's community for 6 months and returned to pilot Common Measure after she told him a father's usefulness required occasional distance. The Poisoned Moon investigation showed a contractor had bypassed atmospheric safeguards to meet extraction quotas. That case belonged to Palehaven and its courts, not our relay story. We provided passage evidence and did not turn the rescue into ownership of their future. Ashlight's builders remained unknown by name. Their archive contained no portraits of leaders. It held maintenance shapes, shelter parts, safe world habitat segments, dependent masks, and the phase isolator. Eric stopped calling them extinct saints. He called them absent engineers, whose work could be tested. The difference allowed admiration without obedience. Ashlight remained closed for 7 months. Trade authorities protested. The Quran route shortened 3 major journeys, and every closed week cost fuel and medicine. Some argued that 1 voluntary pilot death every few years was statistically smaller than the harm caused by delay. The arithmetic treated a proven fatality as an operating expense. We answered with work, not outrage. Permanent braces replaced Common Measure's landing spars. Engineers mapped all 12 branch memories and removed ancient bias without erasing raw records. The central cradle's restraint became a removable support. Its isolated buffer remained visible in the archive. Physically disconnected, each alcove gained an independent mechanical release, local content blocker, medical cutoff, and passive load meter. May refused to build one universal interspecies translator. She created a validation framework in which every species controlled its own private content definitions. A shared timing standard accepted multiple physiological carriers: neural rhythm, skin pulse, pressure cadence, respiratory phase, muscle tone, and sensory fan motion. No species had to imitate a human brain to count as compatible. We also challenged the center itself. The builder system expected one integration function, but our activation showed that alcove conformations could reduce its burden. 3 external phase nodes could divide integration without copying a person. We constructed them from modern links and builder shelter isolators found in 2 more relief crates. Eric hesitated before opening the crates. If we use all 3, no untouched isolator remains, he said. Can we manufacture replacements? Not yet. Then preserve 1 and use 2. May's model showed 2 external nodes plus the center chair, reduced peak integration from 14.8% to 5%. It did not eliminate risk. It made irreversible injury unlikely under tested conditions. The Archive Council approved use of 1 additional original isolator and funded material analysis to reproduce it. Refugee engineers from Palehaven joined the effort. Their first copy leaked timing between channels. Their second overheated. Their 6th matched the ancient component across every tested carrier. They marked it with no logo or ownership claim. Manufacturing records listed every contributor and remained open. The first controlled test used no transit opening. 24 volunteers formed pairs at the 12 branch positions. 1 person in each pair carried control for 30 seconds, while the other observed local load. Then they exchanged through a documented physical handoff. 3 integrators shared center function. Koru held external release. I did not occupy the central chair. Niri Tav took first integration because her species processed spatial timing with lower load. A human rescue pilot named Cass Bren occupied the second node. Eric's took the third after separate consent. I watched from Koru's old position beside the all-open lever. The braid formed. At 22 seconds, branch 5 drifted. Its first operator released. All channels opened as designed. The test stopped. No route opened. No one called the attempt a failure. Inspection found a loose pressure contact shaped for a different lower hand. We replaced it with an adjustable physical surface and repeated a week later. The braid held for 4 minutes with peak load below 6%. The third test performed every activation stage except commitment. The fourth committed to an empty calibration beacon and transferred control after 31 seconds. Every operator left before the timer ended. Only then did Sarah recommend limited reopening. The new Ashlight manual began with a sentence the old one never contained. No route requires a death as proof of continuity. It required at least 12 branch volunteers, 3 integration operators, 1 independent external release witness, 2 medical authorities from different reporting lines, local privacy validation, and a non-neural physical control plan after transfer. No person with an immediate family stake was barred automatically, but the pressure had to be named and alternatives offered. Every limit remained fixed during an activation, unless live medical data supported a safer change that reduced exposure. The manual prohibited a single-person fallback. If distributed control could not form, Ashlight stayed closed. Critics called that rule cowardice. Selro answered during the public hearing. "My sister was courageous," he said. "The chair was still wrong. If your route cannot open without consuming a person, fix your route or wait. Do not borrow her courage to avoid your work." The provision passed. The ritual changed more slowly. Eric's proposed replacing the still hand with the shared hand. Families objected that the new name made individual pilots disappear into a collective. Refugee crews objected that shared sounded voluntary, even when emergency pressure narrowed choice. May disliked hand because 6 participating species had none. The council settled on open continuity because it described function rather than anatomy or virtue. During future activations, the 46 names would be spoken after neural release and before public traffic began. Unless families requested privacy, living operators would state their own names too. The ritual would remember death without requiring it. Ashlight reopened with an uncrewed instrument package. 39 volunteers supported the test because the manual included backups and paired controls. Peak load reached 4.7%. The route opened, transferred, and closed on command. No one suffered measurable injury beyond fatigue. The second passage carried medicine, not passengers. 3 uncrewed cargo pods crossed to the calibration beacon and returned. Engineers examined every seal. The third carried Little Harbor with a skeleton crew who had volunteered after surviving Palehaven. It crossed both directions. Koru piloted again, this time with enough fuel and no family waiting behind a failing filter. Only after those stages did Ashlight accept ordinary traffic. The first passenger reopening carried no emergency priority. That mattered. We needed to learn whether consent survived inconvenience as well as crisis. 6 ships waited on each side of the Charon Veil. Their passengers included traders, students, families separated during the closure, and 3 officials who had complained publicly about lost route revenue. Ashlight scheduled 90 minutes for preparation and warned that any operator could stop without providing a public reason. 36 volunteers assembled. Each branch had a primary and backup. 3 integration nodes had paired observers. Ona served as assistant external witness beside Koru. 10 minutes before Link, a branch operator withdrew. She told Sarah privately. The public board changed her position from ready to unavailable without a name or reason. Her backup moved into primary only after being asked whether the change created pressure. One route official demanded explanation. "Passengers have waited 7 months," he said. "We need to know whether the absence is medical, technical, or personal." "No," Sarah replied. "You need to know the roster remains above safe minimum." What prevents frivolous withdrawal? Nothing. That is what withdrawal means. Training standards decide who enters the pool. A person inside it still controls their body. The official wanted to remove the absent operator from future eligibility. The Archive Council prohibited retaliation pending private review. The operator later returned for another activation. Her reason never became public. Preparation continued. I held no control position. I stood with Eric's in the observation area while new operators entered the alcoves. The central chair remained physically present because external integration nodes had not yet replaced it for certified passenger use. Neri occupied it with the restraint unlocked and load limited to 6%. "Does watching feel easier?" Eric's asked. "No." "Good. I worried command had changed you." "Command mostly changes sleep." Ona checked every release. Koru verified her checks rather than asking visitors to trust apprenticeship. Operators stated identity and boundaries. Sara sealed medical sealings. May confirmed species-specific blockers. Activation began. At sampling, a passenger captain requested priority. Because his government minister had a meeting, traffic control denied it. Route order remained based on scheduled mass and medical need. At alignment, Branch 3 drifted by 1.9%. The operator corrected through a pressure carrier. Load stayed below limit. At field rise, one official whispered that the old single anchor would have reached commitment already. Selro heard. And begun killing someone, he said. The official remained silent. Commitment completed. Physical rings accepted the route. All links opened at 31 seconds. Neri lifted the center support herself and stood before the timer ended. The empty chair remained lit behind her until 0. Eric spoke the 46 names after separation. Neri and the other operators answered present. No one added the operator who withdrew to any list of shame or absence. The aperture opened. Passenger ships crossed at ordinary speed. Children pressed against windows. Traders complained about berth assignments. The delayed minister missed his meeting and submitted a procedural protest. The route held. Nothing about the passage looked legendary. That was its success. Afterward, the withdrawn operator's hook held no personal object, because she had collected it before leaving. Ona checked anyway. Every other operator reclaimed theirs. The procedure accounted for living people before closing the hangar. Traffic reports described the reopening as uneventful. Eric's preserved that word. 46 pilots would have considered uneventful a miracle, he said. Do not make it one. Why? Miracles are difficult to budget for. The first ordinary passage became the basis for routine scheduling, recovery periods, operator pay, and passenger disclosure. It also revealed that 90 minutes of preparation was too short for private consent interviews when a backup changed roles. Ashlight increased the standard window to 2 hours. Trade councils objected. The window stayed. Fees from the route supported a permanent rescue reserve and compensation for volunteer operators. No one could buy a place in the braid or reduce another person's share by paying more. Operators trained as a standing pool, so emergencies did not create last-minute coercion. I returned to common measure when its new docking shoes passed inspection. The cutter looked wrong without original spars, and right with repairs built from Palehaven beacon metal. Dovik painted nothing over the joints. Scars tell a story, he said. Unmarked joints tell maintenance where material changed. Your explanation is less attractive. It will prevent someone welding the wrong alloy. He admitted that was useful. We prepared to leave Ashlight for another rescue assignment. Eric's asked me to meet him in the archive hangar before departure. The temporary ward had become an orderly museum and working relief center. One shelter arch remained open for emergencies. Builder blankets rested in climate storage except 2 that families had used beyond conservation and chose to keep. The replicated phase isolator sat beside the original, allowing visitors to see physical continuity, from ancient relief hardware to modern link. No plaque explained it. Audio guides were available by choice, but the evidence did not depend on readable labels. Eric stood with a young Palehaven caretaker named Ona, beside the central cradle. Ona had been a child on Habitat 9 during the crossing. She remembered the water tank folding against the hull, and nothing of our activation. She is training as an archive engineer, Eric said. Caretaker, Ona corrected. Engineer after certification. She corrects titles. Good qualification. Ona opened a plain ivory crate. Inside lay 12 new pressure surfaces manufactured for species not represented in our first crew. Each could attach to an alcove without hiding the original material. We found 3 body types the current controls exclude, she said. 1 aquatic. 1 distributed colony. 1 species that cannot tolerate gold spectrum light. Solutions? Remote physical pressure bladder for the aquatic operator. Multiple synchronized local contacts for the colony. Filtered evidence light that preserves phase without visible exposure. We will test with them, not on them. Eric's expression carried protective joy rather than reverence. The builder's legacy had not become a fixed answer. It had become permission to keep changing the structure around living bodies. He handed me a small object from the crate. It was the locking pin removed from the central restraint. I cannot accept archive material. The council deaccessioned it. The pin has no evidentiary function after imaging and composition analysis. Pilot families voted that it should not remain as sacred hardware. Why give it to me? Because you noticed the chair fit. I held the pin. It was ordinary gunmetal, worn smooth by 46 preparations. Put it in Common Measure's tool cabinet, Eric said. Use it for something. Bex turned it into a hinge pin for the cutter's emergency meal locker. Eric's approved after inspecting the installation. Our next mission kept us away for 11 months. We repaired a storm shelter, escorted a water convoy, and recovered 6 people from a failed orbital lift. None became legend. All went home. When Common Measure returned, Ashlight had completed 9 distributed activations. 2 stopped before commitment. 1 stopped because an operator reported an unfamiliar memory scent. Investigation showed the scent came from antiseptic shared across all cradle cushions, not neural leakage. The team changed cleaning chemistry and repeated safely. Another stopped because branch load exceeded a volunteer's limit by 1/10. A replacement operator joined after full reset. The route opened 4 hours later. No traffic authority punished a stop. No pilot entered alone. The 10th activation responded to a real emergency. A survey habitat beyond the Charon Vale lost power after a debris strike. It carried 2,300 people and 12 hours of thermal reserve. Ashlight's standing operator pool assembled in 40 minutes. I was present but not scheduled. Neri held first integration. Ona served as external release witness under Eric's supervision. During alignment, 1 external phase node failed. The old instinct returned in several observers. Move all integration into center. Continue before thermal reserve fell. Neri refused. The manual permits 2 nodes only after a new load test, she said. We have not run it with this crew. Traffic authority asked whether I would take the center and carry the missing share based on my emergency experience. No, I said. The word surprised them more than my original willingness to die. People are freezing, the authority said. Then replace the node. Do not make familiarity with harm a qualification for more harm. Palehaven engineers brought a spare replicated isolator. The team reset. The delay cost 71 minutes and kept every load within consent. The route opened with more than 9 hours of habitat heat remaining. All 2,300 people crossed. Neri received public criticism for delay and private thanks from operators. The Archive Council published both beside the technical trace. Later simulations showed center fallback would probably have remained reversible. That did not make her refusal wrong. A plausible safe outcome after the fact did not erase missing consent before action. The standing pool added faster external node replacement drills. Humanity's celebrated contribution to Ashlight became less dramatic each year. I preferred it that way. The change did not stay at Ashlight. 7 ancient relays used versions of the continuity manual. 3 had never activated in living memory. 2 opened only for military emergencies. 1 had killed 9 pilots. Another required a chosen caretaker to remain attached until the final ship crossed, a rule even Ashlight had never imposed. Governments suspended single anchor activation, while review teams inspected original architecture. Some celebrated the suspension as a human reform. I objected in every meeting. The original distributed design was not human, I said. The shelter isolator was not human. Eric's preserved it. May recognized it. 12 species at the first reopening built the workaround. Our crew tested a replacement. Call the method open continuity if you need a name. Do not call it human control. A journalist asked what humanity had contributed. An irritating question at the right time, I said. The answer became popular because it was short. Popularity made it less complete. Humans had also contributed modern medical links, May's first flawed blocker, my personal fallback promise, and a habit of taking machines apart before asking permission. Some helped, some created new risk. At Relay Saroon, inspectors found 8 branch stations and a center chair. Distributed control reduced load exactly as Ashlight predicted. At Relay Vero, the apparent branch seats controlled cooling, not identity. Copying our method there would have overloaded its neural anchor faster. The team stopped after low-power testing and designed a non-neural thermal system before attempting transit. At Relay Neem, The chosen caretaker rule came from a mechanical latch that could be held open by a weight. For 11 centuries, living people had remained, because the manual interpreted, maintained pressure as deliberate witness. Engineers installed a spring. No grand theory replaced inspection. Pilot families formed an inter-relay council. They demanded access to unedited medical traces, private control over personal final messages, and removal of language that described death as required when evidence showed otherwise. They also protected memorials from officials eager to erase institutional embarrassment. If you remove every portrait, Selro said, the next engineer may believe no one paid for the old certainty. The portraits stayed. Operating rules moved beside them, not over them. Eric's redesigned Ashlight's memorial corridor around 3 physical paths. One showed the first reopening and the emergency workaround. One showed 46 pilots and the evidence limits around each activation. One led into the working archive hangar where the isolators, relief structures, and new control surfaces remained in use. Visitors could walk any path first. No path ended at a statue of me. An offered statue had shown me standing before the central chair with one hand raised, while alien volunteers watched in admiration. The sculptor gave my uniform a chest emblem I had never worn, and made Dovik half his actual height. I declined before he finished the model. Dovik wanted to keep it for comic value. The Archive Council rejected unrelated fictional anatomy. Instead, the evidence reveal at the center of the hangar remained physical. The central cradle stood unlocked. 12 luminous alcoves curved around it. The builder isolator rested in its transparent support. Beside it, the replicated isolator could be opened for training. A plain relief arch framed the view toward the transit aperture and the safe world habitat growing along Ashlight's outer ring. Alien caretakers led tours. Refugee children asked questions. Operators practiced releases in public sessions. The supposedly sacred mechanism became more impressive when people could touch the parts intended for their hands. 1 year after Palehaven crossed, Eric's invited the 13 activation volunteers and Koru back for open continuity remembrance. All came except Yara, whose environmental mission was trapped by weather on another moon. She sent a recording and refused to apologize for choosing living work over ceremony. The event began after a routine route activation ended, and every neural link opened. No operator remained in a cradle. The timer reached 0 over empty seats. Eric spoke the 46 names. Families answered if they wished. Selro answered Avens. Then Eric spoke the names of the first distributed crew, not as dead, chosen, or heroic, but as witnesses to the changed procedure. We answered ourselves. Cassia Wren, present. May Juno, present. Dovik Wren, present. Sarah Kell, present. Around the circle, living voices continued. Koru answered last from the external release control. Koru Dayan, present and outside. People laughed. The ritual ended with no silence reserved for a new death. Before the visitors dispersed, Para brought a Palehaven child to the central cradle. The child was named Ivan and had crossed aboard the second nursery barge. He wore a repaired breathing collar even though his lungs no longer needed it. His family had kept the device because its scratched filter housing was the last object they carried from the poisoned moon. He looked at the cradle, then at me. Where did you die? The question stopped 3 nearby conversations. I did not, I said. The lesson says a commander stayed. Dovik leaned in from the next cradle. She did, he told Ivan. She also got out. His caretaker lowered her head in embarrassment. Eric's did not correct the child. He waited for me. I stayed for the dangerous part, I said. So did Para, May, Dovik, Sarah, Eric's, and the others. Then the machine took over, and every one of us left the seats. Koru remained outside so he could release us if the machine did not. Ivan studied the ring. Which one saved my ship? All of them, plus the people flying your ship, the tugs holding the far beacon, and the crews receiving you here. If one control had been missing, we would have stopped and tried again. He frowned at that answer, because it offered no single object to admire. Para opened the support shell on her former alcove. This hinge saved my shoulder when the field startled me, she said. Bex left it unlocked because I asked him. She showed Ivan how the shell moved under ordinary hand pressure. He tried it. The support swung away. Could the commander lock it? He asked. No, Para said. That was the important part. Ivan walked to Koru's external lever. A transparent guard prevented an accidental live action, but the training handle beside it moved freely. He pulled. Every practice cradle opened at once with a soft mechanical sound. Several adults flinched. The child smiled. Eric's watched the empty seats release. Our old tours ended with the chair closing, he said quietly. The final image was endurance. End this one with opening, I said. He changed the visitor sequence that afternoon. Future tours began with the portraits, continued through the physical evidence, and finished only after one visitor used the practice release. The guide named the people who died, but no guide asked a living guest to imitate their final posture. Children learned that the most sacred control in the chamber was the one that let everyone leave. Ivan returned his breathing collar to his caretaker and ran toward the relief office arch. Para checked her hinge after he left. It had loosened by less than a millimeter. She recorded the wear anyway. Afterward, Lale Sorn opened the first permanent Palehaven relief office at Ashlight. It served stranded travelers of any origin. The office kept air, water, translation, legal aid, and voluntary neural link advocates. No one entering it owed allegiance to the rescue force or humanity. The builder shelter arch formed its doorway. Dovik attended his daughter's speech and attempted not to look proud. His faceplates betrayed him. You crossed second among clinics, he reminded her afterward. I crossed when the neonatal council ordered. I taught you respect for command. You tried to die without asking me. A temporary lapse. Their argument moved into the relief office and lasted through dinner. Common Measure received an assignment to map a debris corridor near Relay Varro. May remained at Ashlight to lead translation validation. Bex joined a manufacturing cooperative reproducing adjustable controls. Sarah wrote the first cross-species exposure standard and spent more time preventing institutions from calling maximum values targets than she spent choosing the values. I commanded the cutter for 3 more years. During that time, we never used a single-person anchor. We also failed to save everyone on every mission. A cargo station fire killed 19 before we arrived. A survey ship crossed a radiation front against advice and lost 2 crew. A rescue drone malfunctioned inside a flooded habitat and struck a diver. Shared risk did not grant moral immunity or technical perfection. We investigated each event without converting deaths into proof that sacrifice was noble. That distinction became the hardest part of the better way. People prefer stories with a clean object to remove. Break the lethal chair, cut the bad wire, open 12 cradles. Real systems grow new shortcuts when attention fades. At Ashlight, route demand increased. Operators became tired. Trade councils proposed reducing the standing pool from 36 to 18 because distributed control had accumulated a perfect survival record. The load model showed 18 remained within medical limits. The consent model showed something else. With 36, a volunteer could withdraw without delaying urgent passage. With 18, every absence placed visible pressure on a named replacement. The bodies could tolerate it. The people might not be free to refuse. Eric's and Ona opposed the reduction. Trade officials called them sentimental archivists. I returned for the hearing. What is the purpose of reserve? I asked. Technical redundancy, the route director said. And consent redundancy. That is not an engineering term. It is a control condition. If one person's no can stop a hospital convoy, the system applies coercive gain to that person. More trained operators reduce the gain. Sarah supplied data from volunteer interviews. Withdrawal anxiety doubled during shifts with minimum staffing even though no one had been punished. Operators stayed through headaches they would report on fully staffed shifts. The council kept 36 and funded 48. The route cost rose. No one died to make it efficient. 5 years after Palehaven, I accepted a training and standards post rather than another ship command. The work gave me fewer dramatic windows and more chances to stop bad rules before a countdown. My first class at Ashlight contained operators from 19 species. Some had neural links, some used skin, pressure, breath, or colony timing. One species communicated through changing electric fields and required an optical intermediary, so its natural signal could not couple directly into the relay. We began in the archive hangar. Ona, now certified as both caretaker and engineer, opened the original shelter crate. She showed the class the ancient isolator, the replicated unit, and the adjustable control surfaces. Her expression carried sober awe but no worship. "What did the human commander discover?" she asked. A student answered, "That 12 people could share the load." Incomplete. Another said, that the witness alcoves were controls, also incomplete. They looked at me. I stayed silent. Ona placed one hand on the all-open lever. She discovered that the rule had a history, she said. Once a rule has a history, it can have an ending. The replacement also has a history. That means you must challenge it too. Eric's watched from the relief arch. His sensory fans had lost some color with age. He looked pleased enough to deny it. The students inspected the controls. One found that the aquatic pressure bladder responded 12 milliseconds slower when filled with colder water. Another noticed the colony species contacts counted agreement before every member node received release state. Training stopped. Engineers corrected both before anyone entered a live link. The students had learned the lesson by making our better way better. That evening, Eric's and I walked the memorial corridor. "Do you regret not entering the canonical chair sooner?" he asked. "I entered it first. You stepped out. That was the useful part. 46 others did not. They may not have had time, tools, or permission. Some asked fewer questions. So did their counsels. Do not move a system into one person's silence." He stopped beneath Avon Rowe's portrait. Cell had added no new plaque. The plain maintenance clamp remained below her image. "I still hear the old instruction when a timer begins," Eric said. "Hold still. Speak the name. Do not touch the witness controls." "What do you do?" "Check releases, touch every control, speak names after separation." Then memory changed behavior. "Is that enough?" "It is what memory is for." An alarm interrupted us. Not a drill. Relay Varro reported a passenger habitat trapped beyond its route. After a cooling control test collapsed the local aperture. The habitat carried 9,700 people. Varro's own branch system differed from Ashlight's and could not reopen for 6 hours. Thermal reserve stood at 4. Ashlight could reach the same pocket through an untested cross route if its far focus shifted 30 degrees along the Charon Veil. The geometry resembled none of our certified activations. Trade Control asked whether open continuity could attempt it. The old story waited beneath the question. An emergency. A clock. A proven manual that did not cover the need. Someone experienced enough to take more risk. I looked toward the central cradle. Then I looked at Ona. "Convene the pool," she said. "Publish geometry. Fix limits before names." We did. The pool had 48 qualified operators. 31 were within 1 hour of Ashlight. We did not ask for volunteers until the cross-route model identified positions, expected load, exposure duration, and withdrawal consequences. Relay Varro's trapped habitat had 3 hours 42 minutes of thermal reserve when the first geometry arrived. Ashlight's ordinary route bent through one stable fold. Reaching Varro's pocket required touching 2 folds at once, using the collapsed Varro aperture as a passive reflection point. The route would be longer, narrower, and sensitive to phase disagreement between machines built in different eras. Our 12-branch controls could define the first fold. 4 external physical focus nodes could define the reflection. 3 integration operators could compare them. 1 independent witness held all open release. Minimum active crew was 20. We set 32 positions, 12 primary branches with 12 paired backups, 4 reflection operators, 3 integrators, and 1 external release witness. Additional medical and engineering staff remained unlinked. No position carried more than 6% predicted reversible threshold. Unknown cross-relay coupling could double that. Consent ceiling stayed at 10, with automatic all open at any single trace above it. The pool received those numbers. 29 people volunteered. 3 positions remained open because 5 nearby operators declined unfamiliar coupling, and 14 were off-station or medically unavailable. No one challenged the refusals. 3 trainees qualified for physical reflection control, but not neural integration. The plan used pressure nodes only for those positions. After independent exam and private consent, they joined. Ona took external release witness. Neri held first integration. May took second. A Vero engineer named Pelaru reached Ashlight by fast courier and took third because he understood his relay's passive response. I served as mission coordinator outside the link, with no authority to override releases. The central cradle remained empty. Trade control noticed. Builder identity requires center recognition, the director said. 3 nodes provide integration, May replied. Every certified activation used the chair. Every certified activation used the chair because our test plan retained one familiar component. The external nodes now reproduce its timing within tolerance. We tested them on ordinary routes, not on a cross route. Nothing is tested on this cross route. The chair does not make novelty disappear. The director asked whether I would sit in it as passive reserve. No, I said. An occupied reserve chair could become an irresistible fallback if one node failed. Leaving it empty made the boundary physical. We ran a low-power sample. Ashlight found its ordinary fold. The 4 reflection operators applied Vero's coordinates through mechanical pressure. External nodes aligned 31 crew timings. At 1% field, Relay Vero answered. Its collapsed aperture produced a phase echo. The echo carried an active neural demand. Pelaru's integration load rose from 3% to 7% in 2 seconds. May opened all channels. The test stopped. Varo's manual still had a central anchor adapter connected, even unoccupied. Its memory buffer saw Ashlight's signal and tried to pull a pilot identity through the reflection path. Disconnect the buffer, I told Varo Control. Their caretaker refused. Varo heritage law prohibits alteration without a full council, she said. The earliest council session is 5 hours. The habitat had 3 hours, 11. Can you isolate the cradle from the aperture without opening it? Only with the heritage breaker beneath the memorial floor. It has not moved in 2 centuries. Move it. That is alteration. Ona joined the channel. I am Ashlight's external release witness and archive caretaker. Your buffer is attempting neural control across a route with no consenting operator. Preserving its connection is not neutral conservation. Ashlight's laws are not Vero's. No. Your trapped people are yours too. Tell them what the artifact is doing. Varo's caretaker opened a public station channel. She described the demand trace, the heritage breaker, and the legal restriction. Habitat representatives beyond the closed aperture could hear through emergency radio but not answer quickly. The station's resident council met in the memorial hall. They could not waive heritage law permanently. They could issue an immediate protection order if an artifact created active bodily risk. Pelaru provided his medical trace. May provided the coupling model. The caretaker testified that no pilot had consented. The council authorized temporary physical isolation under recorded custody. Workers opened Varo's memorial floor. The breaker was a gunmetal bar inside a clear housing. Its hinge had corroded. Powered tools near the aperture risked coupling. 6 people attached a ceramic line and pulled together. The bar moved halfway. The memory buffer remained connected. They reset, changed angle, and pulled again. The hinge cracked free. The breaker opened. Varo's phase echo lost its neural demand. The caretaker sealed the bar open and placed 2 observers beside it. We repeated the 1% sample. Pell's load held at 3.2. Thermal reserve stood at 2 hours, 37. Cross-route activation needed 5 minutes 48, because reflection added 36 seconds. Passage for the habitat required 21 minutes. Preparation could finish in 19. We had margin. Not comfort. Every operator restated consent after the Varo failure. Pell reduced his personal ceiling from 10 to 8, because his first exposure left a mild headache. The plan redistributed 1 integration check to Neri and May with their consent, keeping all 3 below predicted 5. Ona tested all open. The central chair remained empty beneath the mechanical timer. Activation began. Ashlight sampled both folds through 12 branch pairs. Backups held no load but followed physical state, ready to exchange only after full stop. Reflection operators found Varo's passive aperture. Integrators aligned without a center occupant. At 4 minutes 58, the 2 folds touched. The transit aperture showed a narrow view of Relay Varo. Beyond its damaged ring, The passenger habitat drifted with exterior heat radiators dark. Frost covered one side. The habitat had divided residents into warm core shelters. Thermal reserve measured the first shelter to reach dangerous cold, not universal death. That distinction allowed medical triage without reducing stakes to one dramatic instant. Field rise loaded Ashlight's repaired ribs. Permanent braces held. At 3 minutes 41, Branch 9 developed noise. Its primary operator reported tingling below injury boundary. Ona opened all channels. The route vanished. Thermal reserve stood at 1 hour 59. Inspection found the operator's local contact pressing a nerve near an old injury. Nothing was wrong with the relay signal. The position was wrong for that body. We adjusted the surface. The operator declined to re-enter because tingling persisted. Her paired backup took the branch after independent consent. The whole crew reset. No transfer occurred while others stayed linked. The stop cost 12 minutes. We began again with 1 hour 47 of thermal reserve. Sampling held. Alignment held. Reflection held. At commitment, Varro's aperture resisted. Its physical rings had collapsed off-axis during the cooling test. Ashlight's route pulled against them, raising reflection load from 4% to 6%. Pelarue recognized the pattern. Varro ring is latched in maintenance detent, he said. Control thinks aperture closed by choice. Can Varro release it? The caretaker checked. The detent sat in an evacuated ring sector unreachable before habitat reserve failed. Ashlight could overpower it. Predicted reflection load would reach 9, below automatic 10 but above 3 operators' personal ceiling of 8. We could ask them to amend. We did not. Alternative, I said. May modeled distributing detent force into the 12 branches. Each primary would rise by 0.4. Their ceilings allowed it. Every person had to consent because the action differed from plan. Ona called a hold at commitment without maintaining active demand. Ashlight allowed 6 seconds. Branch 1 consents, the first operator said. Around the ring, 12 separate voices answered. Reflection operators consented to hold current load, not 9. Integrators consented to the changed topology. May distributed force. Varro's maintenance detent released. The far aperture rotated into alignment. No one crossed a personal ceiling. At 31 seconds, Ashlight and Varro transferred route stability into their physical rings. All neural and timing links opened. The timer continued to 0 over an empty central chair. The cross route formed. Varro's rescue tugs reached the passenger habitat and guided it toward the aperture. The vessel was a broad ring habitat never designed for ancient transit. Engineers collapsed external radiators, secured loose debris shielding, and reduced rotation. It entered with 1 hour, 9 minutes of first shelter heat remaining. The cross route bent around its ring. Ashlight's aperture showed the habitat edge as a moving wall of gunmetal and frost. Route error rose to 1.7, below 2.1 stop. Physical branch operators adjusted after transfer, using pressure controls. No neural link reopened. 21 minutes after entry, the habitat emerged beside Ashlight. Rescue fields caught it beyond the aperture boundary. Warm shelters connected. All 9,700 people survived. Cold injuries required treatment for 106. No one suffered irreversible neural harm during activation. Varro's council met again after rescue. It did not copy Ashlight's manual blindly. Engineers inspected its 8 branch seats, cooling controls, center adapter, and maintenance detent. They found a distributed method suited to Varro rather than ours. Heritage law gained an emergency consent clause and required passive isolation of any memory buffer without an operator. The central chair at Ashlight remained empty for every later activation. I had entered it first when one pilot was expected to die. Finding a better way eventually meant learning the better way did not need me inside it. Ona preserved the empty chair in the working archive, unlocked and connected to nothing. Visitors sometimes asked why it remained if the external nodes replaced it. Because absence can be physical evidence, she said. No body belongs there now. Eric's retired as senior keeper in his 68th year and continued arriving every morning before his successor. Ona gave him an observer desk without control authority. He complained about the title and corrected archive humidity from memory. Cell Row completed 3 years on the Archive Council. He helped write family access rules then left when Avon's case no longer needed to define his days. Before departing, he moved her plane maintenance clamp from beneath the portrait into the training room. She used tools before she became a symbol, he said. Students used the clamp to practice opening stuck releases. The 46 portraits remained. No 47th joined them. 10 years after Palehaven, Ashlight's safe world habitat wrapped 1/4 of the outer ring. It held travelers delayed by route closures, refugees choosing destinations, operator families, archivists, engineers, and people who simply found work there. Relief infrastructure copied from builder designs remained plain, accessible, and unmarked. The archive hangar's central axis led from Eric's opened ivory crate through the ancient isolator, the replicated nodes, the 12 luminous cradles, and the broad aperture beyond. High white evidence light warmed into gold around faces and faded into cosmic blue-black depth. That physical arrangement told the story better than a heroic portrait. An alien caretaker had opened a human question and found living proof inside an absent civilization's machine. Not that sacrifice was always avoidable, but that no manual deserved a body, merely because earlier bodies had obeyed it. During an anniversary class, a refugee child asked me whether I had been afraid when I sat in the center. Yes. Did you know everyone would live? No. Then why did you stop the old plan? I looked at the 12 alcoves. I didn't know the old plan was wrong at first. I knew it had unanswered parts. We tested those parts until the choice changed. What if the tests had failed? Then we would have faced a worse choice, honestly. The child considered that and touched an adjustable pressure control. This one is too high for me. Ona lowered it. The improvement required no ceremony. The hardest challenge to open continuity came from people who accepted every technical finding and still wanted the old option preserved. The Inter-Relay Defense Compact proposed an emergency sovereign override called the Last Key. Under declared attack, a military commander could reconnect an isolated center buffer, seat one qualified pilot, and open a route without waiting for a distributed pool. The proposal required personal consent and limited use to imminent mass casualty. Its authors were not fools. They had studied Ashlight's records. They agreed that distributed control was safer. They argued that war could destroy external nodes, scatter volunteers, jam consent channels, or leave one person as the only available operator. Permanently prohibiting the single anchor, they said, confused a moral preference with physical possibility. Admiral Murr, older and now head of rescue doctrine, asked me to join the review. You once said you would take the chair if testing failed, he reminded me. I also called that a command flaw. Would you let 10,000 people die if only one volunteer could open the route? No honest answer exists without the actual person, route, alternatives, and time. That is why I oppose writing death back into a standing key. It turns an extreme choice into prepared infrastructure. Prepared infrastructure gets used. The Compact's chief architect, General Aurel San, met us inside Ashlight's control chamber. She was a disciplined Kavari officer with paired breathing folds along her ribs. Her own child had died when a military route failed during the border wars. My proposal does not praise sacrifice, she said. It preserves agency. If I am the only operator and my people are trapped, your manual forbids me to choose. It forbids the station from treating your choice as a certified operating mode, I said. You could still act physically if you bypassed it. Then you prefer untested improvisation to a documented last resort. That was a fair criticism. We separated 3 questions. Could one pilot still open Ashlight after our modifications? Should a single-person method be tested? Should command architecture preserve it as an available order? The first answer was probably yes. The central chair could be reconnected to a buffer and duplicate one signal across 12 branches. The doubled Alcove 11 path was gone, reducing peak burden. Modern medicine might extend survival. No model brought load below lethal range for full commitment. Testing the method on a person would require exposing someone to predicted fatal injury when non-lethal calibration methods existed. The medical council refused. General San proposed testing with synthetic neural tissue. We agreed. May built a full-scale model using 12-branch simulators, a center interface, and cultured neural networks without consciousness. The single anchor adapter aligned faster than distributed assembly by 94 seconds. During commitment, repeated phase demand destroyed integration pathways. A memory buffer restored coherence twice and worsened tissue damage each time. The route model opened. The tissue failed. General San did not dispute the result. 94 seconds may still matter, she said. Then reduce distributed assembly time, Ona replied. The Archive Council invited military crews to test emergency readiness. A standard 36-person pool assembled in 28 minutes from rest. Under simulated attack with communication loss, it took 47. The last key required 11 minutes to charge its buffer plus one available pilot. The timing advantage was not 94 seconds from alarm. It existed only after the lethal system was prepared and one person already present. We designed mobile continuity kits. Each kit carried replicated phase isolators, adjustable controls, local privacy modules, mechanical all-open hardware, and training for 24 operators. Rescue ships, not only relays, could transport them. Military units distributed kits across separate vessels, so one attack could not remove all control. Operators trained in overlapping roles. No central identity buffer traveled with them. Assembly during the next blind test took 14 minutes. General San still asked the legal question. If every kit is destroyed and one pilot remains, does your law prohibit choice? Selro answered as pilot family representative. A law can say the state may not prepare my sister's death as equipment. It cannot control every hand in the final minute. If someone breaks the seal to save others, investigate afterward with compassion. Do not place the seal-breaking tool in a commander's pocket and call the pressure voluntary. The compact rejected the last key by a narrow vote. It adopted a catastrophe clause instead. No authority could order or pre-authorize a single anchor. If an individual independently bypassed safeguards under an unforeseeable extreme, rescue and medical care remained mandatory, and the act received evidence review without automatic criminal guilt or automatic honor. No benefits to the person's family could depend on death. The clause satisfied no one completely. That made it harder to use as propaganda. General San joined mobile kit training. During her first exercise, she occupied an external reflection node rather than center integration. You gave me the simplest position, she complained. You are new, Ona said. I designed the sovereign override. That is not a control qualification. San passed after 3 attempts. The debate changed my own answer to the question I had been asked for years. What if there truly were one pilot and no time? I would not pretend I knew what that person must choose. I would give them every fact, search until the final second for another path, refuse to command their death, and refuse to shame survival. If they acted, I would preserve the evidence of why the system narrowed around them. A better way did not guarantee the universe would never demand loss. It made institutions prove they had not demanded it too soon. The mobile kits prevented the hypothetical from becoming common. Within 2 years, every active ancient relay stored at least 2 on separate rescue vessels. Operator pools trained across borders. Refugee communities received seats on deployment boards because people trapped behind routes understood urgency without romanticizing it. Ashlight's pool expanded to 60. Participation lasted 1-year terms with paid recovery time, medical monitoring, and a right to leave without explanation. Some served once, others renewed. No portrait distinguished frequent operators from first-time ones. Recruitment exposed another inherited assumption. The first standing pool drew heavily from pilots, soldiers, and rescue specialists because authorities believed calm under danger predicted good relay control. Medical data showed no such advantage. Gardeners, teachers, machinists, and caregivers often maintained steadier voluntary timing because they were practiced at coordinating without command. Ashlight opened training to residents. A Palehaven baker became one of its most reliable Branch 4 operators. She kept cadence by imagining kneading intervals and never exceeded 4% load. An elderly aquatic historian controlled a reflection bladder through slow pressure changes. A young military pilot failed 3 privacy tests because she pushed past discomfort rather than report it. She qualified only after learning that early release was part of the job. No aptitude score rewarded pain tolerance. Training assessed boundary recognition, clear reporting, independent release, and willingness to transfer control. An operator who held too long failed even if the route model remained stable. A backup who challenged a primary's handoff received credit when evidence supported the challenge. The change affected command culture outside Ashlight. Rescue crews began asking whether selection systems confused obedience with reliability. Hospitals reviewed devices that required patients to remain still after treatment ended. Mining stations inspected manual locks installed for emergency continuity and found 3 that prevented workers from leaving safe machinery. Not every review discovered a hidden sacrifice. Most controls had good reasons. The important result was that reasons became visible. I taught one pool session on the original countdown. Students reconstructed our 6 stages from raw logs. They found 2 decisions we could improve. We had allowed Koru to leave the independent stop for 36 seconds during brace repair, relying on my center release. We had also improvised the missing external witness path at 16 seconds without testing pressure amplitude. Both choices worked. Neither belonged in routine doctrine. Modern activations used 2 external release witnesses in separate locations and a pre-tested maintenance contact. Physical repair teams waited inside shielded access before field rise. No witness abandoned stop to become a mechanic. "Does that mean your activation was unsafe?" a student asked. "It means our outcome does not certify every step. But if you had waited to test, Palehaven's clinics would have failed." Yes, emergency justification explains why we accepted risk. It does not transform the risk into a best practice. The student marked both deviations in her model. Eric's kept copies of every class correction. The archive of our better way grew larger than the continuity manual within 4 years. "Soon no one will read it," he said. Then route instructions must remain short while evidence stays available. ONA reduced live procedure to 1 physical sequence card per role, each readable by touch and local language. Operators trained on the full history, but did not carry a tribunal into the cradle. Good rules could be clear without pretending they had no past. ONA added a wall of plain removable hooks near the training area. During activation, each operator placed an ordinary personal object on 1 hook. A glove, tool, scarf, food wrapper, or child's drawing. They collected it after release. "Is that a ritual?" I asked. "A check," she said. "If an object remains, we verify its owner left safely. And if someone forgets, we verify before assuming tragedy." The practice echoed the 46 memorial objects without preparing a new memorial. It became popular because it was useful. During the 100th activation preparations, I watched operators fill the hooks. One left a ceramic clamp copied from Avin's tool. Another left a child's fabric star. An aquatic operator placed a sealed water bead. A distributed colony left 6 identical pebbles, and instructed ONA not to count the group present unless all 6 returned. The central chair received nothing. No one belonged to it. Before the activation, the Archive Council released a 10-year outcome study. Ashlight had opened 99 times under distributed control. 7 attempts stopped and reset. 3 operators experienced reversible neural inflammation. 21 reported transient headaches or sensory disturbance. No private memory crossed after the first emergency test. No operator died. Every medically urgent route eventually opened, with the longest safety delay at 71 minutes. Traffic economists calculated the delays cost more than maintaining a single anchor adapter would have cost financially. The report printed that too. Safety purchased time, staff, equipment, and unused capacity. Calling it free would make future budget cuts look harmless. Route authorities funded the cost because pilot families, operators, refugee councils, and ordinary passengers could see what it bought. The study also recorded 2 cases in which operators concealed symptoms to avoid delay. Neither caused injury. Both exposed the limits of formal consent under public pressure. Ashlight changed procedure so medical reports went privately to independent clinicians, and replacement occurred without announcing whose boundary stopped the route. The crowd no longer knew whom to blame. That was deliberate. Eric's read the study at his observer desk. "We once announced the pilot's name before activation," he said. "Everyone knew whom to thank and whom to watch die. Now they know the pool. Less satisfying. More survivable. Yes." He closed the report and looked toward the safe world habitat. Do humans have a word for a legend that becomes maintenance? Infrastructure. That is a terrible word. It keeps the air on. He added it to the archive vocabulary anyway. The night before my final visit, I slept aboard Common Measure for nostalgia and discovered the emergency meal locker hinge squeaking. The gunmetal pin from the lethal restraint had worn slightly. Bex had left replacement instructions. I removed the pin, cleaned it, checked diameter, and added 1 drop of lubricant. It returned to the hinge and moved smoothly. An object once used to lock a commander into a dying chair now held crackers in place during acceleration. That was not symbolic when the ship was hungry. It was useful. My final visit as standards director came when Ashlight prepared its 100th distributed activation. Ordinary passenger traffic waited beyond both sides. No refugee clock drove the operators. The standing pool assembled, checked privacy, tested releases, and refused one contact surface until a worn hinge was replaced. The delay lasted 20 minutes. Passengers complained. The hinge changed. 36 operators entered paired positions. 3 integration nodes warmed. Ona, now senior caretaker, held external release. The central cradle stayed empty. I stood with Eric's beneath the relief arch. "Do you miss command?" he asked. "Only when other people use it incorrectly." "That sounds like always. It improves with distance." Activation began. The 12 alcoves filled with warm gold light. Operators formed one timing braid while remaining separate, the aperture aligned. Every load stayed below limit. At 31 seconds, physical rings accepted the route. All links opened. Operators stood, spoke their own names, and left the cradles. Eric spoke the 46 memorial names after separation. Families answered. Living operators answered too. The timer reached 0. No one remained inside. The aperture opened onto stars. Passenger vessels crossed in both directions, carrying people who knew nothing about my father, Dovik's daughter, Eric's guilt, May's first privacy leak, Koru's refusal, or Avon's final question. They did not need to know every history to benefit from the changed rule. The last ship cleared. Ashlight closed the route on command. White evidence light dimmed across the archive. Golden rims remained around the open cradles. Beyond them, the safe world habitat glowed with ordinary windows. Eric's touched the external release lever once. "Still free," he said. "Good." I placed my hand on the first cradle, the one I had entered believing a commander might need to die, because a manual said one pilot must. It was warm from the operator who had already stood and gone home. Around it, every other cradle was empty for the same reason.